My marriage to Gwen required a boost. Our 4th wedding anniversary was approaching, and something had changed in the previous 3 months. The changes correlate with Gwen's recent promotion to project manager, when she took on a critical job after her supervisor went on leave due to a heart attack. She had a lot of responsibilities, and her usually barely managed OCD had resurfaced. Gwen began to spend more and more time at work, and our time together diminished proportionately. At first, Gwen seemed to enjoy the small things I did to relieve her stress, such as foot massages, housekeeping, and washing. Then, around 6 weeks after her promotion, nothing mattered anymore. My touches became undesired. My comments, offered in an attempt to support her, were dismissed. I lived with a stranger and was on the point of despair. I discussed this with friends who had been married for a long time, particularly those who knew Gwen and I as a loving pair. They were all startled by my experience. Paul, my friend, made a less normal comment. This is difficult to believe. Every partnership experiences a momentary slump. But you and Gwen have only been married for 4 years. This should not occur for at least another 3 years. Are you certain you are not imagining things? When I told Paul that Gwen and I hadn't had love in over 3 weeks, he was astonished to hear some of her previous remarks. He progressed from surprised to amazed and transitioned into a masculine model. Maybe she is cheating on you. I don't understand how or when she operates like a bee in the office. She is in charge of the transfer to a new platform. From beginning to end, she is responsible for the entire project. This is a pivotal point in her career, and Gwen is too focused on her profession and goals to pass up this opportunity by hiding in a remote location with your sweetheart. Well, it appears that is the cause, youngster. Your wife has a difficult project that is absorbing her, and you are becoming collateral damage. I considered it, but something still doesn't feel right. Paul gazed to the bottom of his beer glass. I knew him well enough to read his thoughts. He was considering if he should obtain another one or go home to his wife and children. I noticed his face light up with a tiny smile as he made his decision and motioned to the bartender to shut the tab. Paul adores his family. After paying the bill, he gave me one more bit of advice. Let me say one thing less. Don't be naive and blame Gwen for anything, especially if her sole mistake is working late under pressure to complete this project. There is nothing worse than having an unsupportive husband. Do not be like that person. The stranger on the other side of me must have heard Paul's final comment. I could scarcely understand what he was saying to himself. There is nothing worse than an unsupportive husband, except a dishonest spouse. I opted to believe but verify. For example, the next Saturday when Gwen was scheduled to spend the day at the office installing new equipment, I called her in the middle of the day and asked if I might bring pizza for lunch. How did Gwen respond? Yes, that would be very nice of you. But can you eat 3 enormous pizzas? There are 4 of us here and we are all hungry. I took the pizza order and headed to her office to deliver it. Gwen introduced me to 2 men I had never met before. I knew Janice from the previous New Year's party. Brad and Clark were newly employed. There were 5 of us sitting and 8 pizzas. The talk was casual, but Brad was conspicuously silent. But I grew accustomed to that when speaking with technologists, without being very evident. I did my best to find out how Gwen was spending her time away from home. Without a doubt, she dedicated all of her time to this endeavor. I've never caught her off guard. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at home waiting for Gwen. I have discovered no indication of any inappropriate activity on her behalf, but we have yet to reconcile emotionally or physically. I decided to try a different method. Dinner was boiling on the stovetop. A bottle of Merlot was steeping, and the table was set with candles and a little vase of irises. Gwen walked through the door at 7:30. Gwen stared at the table, surprised for a time, before smiling, kissing me, and removing her coat and shoes. Forrest. That's really cute. I poured her a drink of wine, cleaned up, and changed her clothes. Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. Then we should talk. She stared at me. When Gwen landed, the wheels in her head began to whirl. Dinner was provided, medallions with fried potatoes and asparagus. We ate while talking about our day until the last mouthful. Gwen sank back in her chair, unable to wait any longer. What is this about? Less. I took out and opened the envelope. Gwen, I understand how difficult these 5 months have been for you, and I know your conversion day is in 2 weeks on Saturday. I believe we need to spend time together after your conversion. Consider staying close for at least 2 weeks after the conversion. I've booked us a week's vacation beginning in a month. We have 24 hours to answer yes or no. If I do not cancel by tomorrow, we would lose 25% of our investment. I gave Gwen a brochure for a Caribbean resort. Our first-class flight takes us to the Dominican Republic, where we will stay at an all-inclusive couples resort. I sat back and watched Gwen switch between gazing at me and flipping through the brochure. After a long pause, she spoke. There were tears in her eyes. Les, this is fantastic. I would love to go on a trip with you. The time is great. Everything should be settled by the time we leave. Gwen stood up and sat on my lap, her arms around my neck. Thank you for this. She kissed me. The next 4 weeks seemed to drag on forever. Gwen's project went into action. The conversion was effective, and minor issues were quickly handled. Gwen and I resumed our sexual relationship, not twice a day as before, but every 4 weeks. We did it at least once per week. I parked my car in a faraway lot and took the shuttle to the terminal. All we had were 2 little suitcases, my backpack, and her purse. I hadn't planned on wearing anything other than shorts, polos, and swim shorts for the entire week. Gwen carried 3 summer dresses, 2 pairs of shorts, a couple of adorable shirts, and 2 of the sexiest bikinis imaginable in her carry-on luggage. This was expected to be a hot week. We'd received our boarding passes and were standing in line for first class when a familiar face approached us. Gwen appeared astonished and may have spoken louder than she intended. "Brad, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you." Gwen. I was annoyed, assuming it was a job issue. "Can't this wait till Gwen returns from vacation?" Brad ignored me. "Gwen, we need to chat now." I was about to add something else when Gwen interrupted me. She appeared disturbed and worried less. "Please move ahead. I will handle everything, and I will be close behind you. It'll only be a few minutes." I paused. Gwen mentioned it again. "Please, let's go. I will be close behind you." She turned to Brad, enraged. I reasoned that if I stayed, it would just delay what she intended to say. I looked at my watch and proceeded through security. When I got at our gate, the plane had already started landing. I needed a beverage. I knew where to obtain it. And I committed the second biggest mistake of my life. When the flight attendant approached me, I strolled down the first-class hallway, presented him my boarding pass, walked up the jet bridge, and sat in my seat. I didn't even give her an opportunity to speak. "Hello? Can I get a double bourbon?" Neat. I must have said it beautifully because the young lady returned with my drink and was under 30. I thanked her before taking a long swallow, the drink warming my throat and quickly sending a wave of relaxation through my body and mind. The last passengers were boarding. I pulled out my phone to call Gwen. No response. I went to voicemail. I sent a message. "Where are you now?" Nothing. I sent a second mail. "You are late. Where are you now?" I was so focused on my phone that I didn't notice the cabin door close. My body felt the plane's movements. We left the terminal at the same time. My phone beeped with a message. It was from Gwen, and she just wrote, "I'm so sorry." The flight attendant stood next to me. "Sir, you'll need to switch off your phone." Her voice jolted me out of my trance. "Can I come outside? This is an emergency." "What type of emergency?" "My wife. She missed her flight. I believe she abandoned me. Sorry, sir. We can't go back to the terminal because of this. Think about the other passengers, please. They will suffer as a result of any delays." My expression must have conveyed my helplessness, because she offered me a tiny bottle of bourbon before beginning the safety demonstration. 5 long hours later, the jet touched down at Punta Cana Airport in the Dominican Republic. I called Gwen's number right away. Of course, she didn't explain why anything had to go, right? When I hung up, I noticed a missed call from her and a voicemail. It sounded like she was in tears. It only took me 2 tries to figure it out. "I apologize, but the letter I wrote you will clarify everything. I apologize for taking such a cowardly approach. You deserve better. That is all." I connected to email via my phone. The plane was prepared to disembark. What bad timing. I left the plane, sat down as quickly as possible, and read Gwen's letter. "Forrest, I apologize. I imagined we might move away together and start again. For the previous 4 months, you urged that we move away together. I engaged in an affair with Brad." The letter continued. Gwen went between apologizing, justifying, and describing what had transpired. Who is it for and how long? I sat down and read the note, trying to keep myself under control. I probably did not handle it well. When I eventually got up and went through customs, something about my appearance must have tipped off the customs officer. Before I knew it, I was sitting in a small room with my bags and 2 agents. Fortunately, one of the agents understood English fluently, and I was able to persuade him to read my wife's Dear John letter to understand why I looked like a lost soul. Is there anything worse than a miserable jerk who has just been exposed as a cuckold? The looks I got were terrible, but I didn't cry trying to be brave. I was discharged within an hour. I walked out at dusk and caught the shuttle to the resort. It was nearly 8 p.m. I needed a drink and a bed. The blows continued when I attempted to check into my room as the young lady at the front desk inquired, "Where's your wife?" My wife couldn't attend. "Sorry, sir, this is a couples-only resort. I cannot let you check in without your wife. I paid $5,000 for 1 week. I need a room. Could you make an exception?" She could not. I asked to speak with the manager. The night manager approached the counter and explained the rules, reminding me that the reservation specifically stated that singles were not permitted under any circumstances. When I asked where I could stay that night, he was kind enough to contact another resort down the beach that had a room available. He even told the doorman to take me to the resort. When I tried to check into the second resort, my credit card was declined. I took out the second card I kept in case of emergency. Rejected. I tried calling Gwen to figure out why our cards weren't working. No response. I called both banks' hotlines and was informed that the cards had been canceled. I sent Gwen a message. "Why did you cancel the cards?" 10 minutes later, I received her response. "Brad recommended canceling the cards. He claimed you wouldn't need them because the resort was prepaid and all-inclusive." As I read her response, I believe I surprised the hotel employee with my use of profanity and other profanities. Fortunately, my only luck that day was that I had more than $600 in cash. I paid for the night in cash, leaving me with slightly more than half of my money. I walked into my room, which was probably the worst $300 per night room I'd ever stayed in, and sat down for a moment to collect my thoughts. I could not access my bank accounts. I'll have to call the bank in the morning just in case. I called my brother in Denver after explaining the situation, convincing him and his wife that I wasn't joking, and then hearing them both say, "No, not Gwen and that jerk." I was finally able to determine the source of my immediate problem. My brother agreed to go to his bank first thing in the morning and transfer a few thousand to the closest Western Union. I then called the airline. My ticket was non-refundable. My mistake was selecting the cheapest option, which meant the tickets were not insured. I discovered that if I pay for my return tickets in cash, I must purchase them in person at the terminal. The first available flight from Punta Cana was a red-eye on Tuesday evening. I sat down to read Gwen's letter for the second and final time. "Forrest, I apologize. I thought I could leave with you and start over. I had an affair with Brad for the past 4 months before you suggested we move away together. I didn't intend to cheat on you as the project became more demanding, and I spent less time with you and more time with Brad. I started to lean on him for emotional support. No, this should not have occurred, but it did. I spent the weeks after his first kiss resisting moving on. But in the end, one long Saturday in the office and after the rest of the team had left, I succumbed to his advances and became a cheater. I kept wondering why you couldn't see me moving away from you, and it pulled me closer to Brad. Only now, as I sit and write this letter, do I realize how many times you asked what was bothering me and what you could do to help me. But it's too late now, isn't it? To admit everything you tried to do for our marriage, including the week at the resort when you told me about spending a week together to reconnect. It was like you opened my eyes. At that moment, I realized that I wanted to be your wife. The next day I told Brad it was finished. It was tough for him to accept this. Almost every day he sought to revive our romance, and in most situations I refused his advances. Yes, I'm weak. I was weak when I gave in to his seduction and started cheating. I was weak when I enabled him to convince me to say goodbye for the last time, several times during those weeks. And I was weak when Brad showed up at the airport and convinced me to skip our flight and our week together. I hope you can spend this week at least enjoying the time to get through us. Brad informed me that if it were him spending a week at a resort in paradise with amazing cuisine, lots of cocktails, sun and time away from work would be how he'd like it to finish. I hope this is true for you too. I almost got on the plane, but Brad remarked that you should have found out about the affair after he showed up at the airport, and you probably wouldn't want to be around me after that. It made sense, and I couldn't image sitting next to you for 5 hours while feeling your contempt. I also need this week to figure out what I did. I will try to return your call when you return next Sunday. My clothing and everything else should be out of the house by then. Please do not hate me. I knew I had done too much to be your loving wife again, but I couldn't take your hatred. Unfortunately, Gwen, I almost deleted this letter but chose to save it instead. At the very least, it answered one question. Gwen was most likely cheating with that guy in the office, which is why I never caught her. The bar remained open for another hour, enough time to walk downstairs and toast my cheating wife and the dissolution of my marriage. Growing up, my father made certain that all 3 of his children understood his message about alcohol and drinking. I heard it before my senior year and again on the morning of my 21st birthday. Less drinking never fixed the problem. To make matters worse, there are 3 categories of nasty drunks. There are wailing whiners, belligerent losers, and laughing hyenas. Do not be one of them, men. Drink slowly and steadily. Enjoy your high. But be aware of your limitations. And if I ever discover that you drink and drive, I do not care how old you are. I will take your car and kick your buttocks. My father was not a teetotaler, or he could drink a beer alongside the best of them. But I never saw my father act silly or drive after consuming more than 1 beer. He lived by his own rules. That's why I knew I'd leave this place after 2 beers, but I savored both before heading back to my hotel as I finished my first. I gazed around the bar. The bartender was looking at me while watching the dancers, and as our gazes connected, we both laughed. The male on the dance floor was over 60 kilograms heavier, and the lady resembled Olivia Oil. Young folks can see who it is. I almost said something to the bartender. At least his wife did not abandon him at the airport. This made me think. How could I have messed things up? Did I do something wrong? Were our 5 years together, including our 4 years of marriage, an illusion? I did not think so. Until a few months ago, it appeared that Gwen and I were in love and happy. This got me thinking as I drank my second beer. 5 years ago, we met at a Peoria minor league Chiefs baseball game. Gwen was in a group of girls and wearing a Ryne Sandberg t-shirt. Although the Chiefs are associated with the St. Louis Cardinals, this portion of Illinois is home to a large number of Cubs supporters. I sat down close to the group and started getting to know a tall blonde with a lovely face and long legs. I introduced myself by buying all 4 of them a beer. I then used her t-shirt to initiate a conversation. You appeared too young to be wearing a Sandberg t-shirt. He was ahead of your time, wasn't he? Ryne Sandberg was my father's favorite player. He purchased it for me. I introduced myself by extending my hand. I am Thomas Lester. Everyone calls me Les. She shook my hand. Gwen Harper. Everyone calls me Gwen. She stated that she is a senior at Bradley University studying in information technology. I told them I graduated from college 2 years ago and worked in Caterpillar's engineering department. We're back to the Sandberg t-shirt motif. Dad described the day he married my mother as one of the 5 finest days of his life. My brother Pete and I were born on the same day. The Cubs drafted him on the same day that Ryne Sandberg hit 2 home runs off Bruce Sutter. Did your dad play for the Cubs? He never made it to the major leagues, although he spent 2 years in Iowa's Triple-A system. Still, not bad. Gwen and I talked till the finish of the game as she left with her pals. She gave me her phone number and told me to call. I did it the following day. That weekend we met, and our relationship began. It took me a few months to eventually get Gwen into my bed, but by then I was utterly captivated by her. She was both attractive and liked. He excelled in sports and was a brilliant individual. Our first evening together was a revelation. Gwen consented to return to my place after dinner and a movie. We were making out on my couch when she requested me to take her to bed. Gwen had the figure of a goddess, but she was the most bashful sexual partner I'd ever had. She appeared happy but was too shy to look me directly in the eyes. She did not say a word the entire time. This first night is an excellent example. After we made love with her, nestled against me, breathing sweetly, almost falling asleep, she asked if she might borrow a blouse to sleep in. No, we're sleeping better. I'd never done that before. You will like it. She fell asleep in my arms, her nude body beside me. The following morning, Gwen awoke and requested again. Do you have something I can wear? No. I want you to remain nude." She got out of bed, went to the restroom, and then came out to join me in the kitchen while I made coffee. She didn't say anything or look at me the entire time, but I could see a 5'6", 120 pounds heavenly work of pure art walking around my apartment outside the bedroom. We got along on multiple levels. We had one issue that could have been the deciding element. Her friends, and especially her father, were quite competitive about their sports teams. My alma mater, Purdue, faced Bradley in men's basketball. We were in the pub, watching the game. I appreciated it when Purdue won, but that didn't imply I could influence whether they won or lost. But that night, whenever Bradley scored, one of Gwen's people would get in my face and slap the palms of the other players at the table. Fortunately, Bradley won. I was informed I needed to purchase the following circle. I clenched my teeth, refused to send them, but stated unequivocally that the winner would pay. Nothing happened, but I'm sure I didn't impress any of Gwen's friends that night. Gwen appeared satisfied with everything and said nothing. Dodging the bullet did not prepare me for seeing her father. It was Thanksgiving. Gwen and I had been dating. After 4 months, it was finally time to meet the parents. When I stepped into their Arlington Heights home, my parents greeted me right away. As brilliant as Gwen was, she was capable of making mistakes on occasion. And this was one of those moments just after they met. Gwen jokes, "Be careful, Dad. He is a Cardinals fan." Was the old man's expression simply a grimace? It took the Cubs 5 years to reach and win the World Series, and in the preceding 10 years, the Cards had appeared 3 times and won twice. So I completely get how this might be a painful point for a Cubs fan, particularly someone who has played in their development system. I needed to gain points with my pals, so I downplayed my racism. Gwen and I returned to Peoria following Thanksgiving, and everything was back to usual. She already had a job with State Farm in Bloomington. I phoned Mr. Harper, asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, and purchased a ring. I introduced Gwen to my parents 2 days before Christmas. They adored her and proposed to her late on December 24th. Gwen cried, said yes, and we began planning a wedding at the end of July. Exactly 1 year later at Dozer Park. We did not move in together. Gwen maintained her flat with the 2 girls she shared it with. But Gwen stayed with me 4 or 5 evenings every week. It was a little silly, but her parents did not believe in premarital cohabitation. We rented a modest farmhouse in Peoria, where I worked, and Bloomington, where Gwen worked, and relocated here after our honeymoon. We got married on July 30th and spent our honeymoon on Miami Beach. Gwen wore a little bikini, not a thong, and never went topless, thank goodness. Nonetheless, she remained one of South Beach's most attractive women. We made love every day that first year, and for the next 3.5 years, we planned a house and children until she turned 30. That was until 4 months ago, when everything went wrong. And I found myself alone, some 1,000 miles from home, drinking Dominican beer. The bartender made the last call. I finished my second beer, thanked the man for the space to ponder, tipped him generously, and returned to my room late Monday morning after calling our bank and discovering that all 3 of our accounts had closed. I was at the Western Union office, receiving the money that my brother had sent. I took a taxi to the airport and purchased a ticket for the Tuesday evening flight. After ensuring that nothing would open before then, I returned to the resort at midday, having extended my stay till the following day. What happens now? I did not want to start drinking, so I put on my swimming trunks and went for a run along the beach, followed by a swim in the warm sea. I returned to my room immediately after this. Nothing spoils the mood of a guy who was dumped less than 30 hours earlier. Then, seeing a handful of couples embracing romantically, I ordered room service to avoid having to see the same thing while eating. I spent the next 5 hours reading and almost finished Vince Flynn's book, which I purchased at the hotel boutique on Tuesday. Another long-run swim. Check out lunch in town, go to the airport. 7 hours spent reading another spy novel. Boarding an airplane. I tried and failed to sleep on the plane. It is a 2.5-hour drive to our house. And now I'm home. Standing in front of an empty bed, the majority of Gwen's things and personal goods have already been removed. I awoke Wednesday afternoon after falling asleep on my bed. I called a friend at his office and learned the lawyer's name. I called Henry Abbott's office and scheduled a meeting for Thursday afternoon. "Mr. Abbott, please call me. Henry was entirely focused on business. He had no intention of being my best buddy, but he assured me that he would do an excellent job representing me. He listened to my narrative and promised to have the documents ready for my inspection on Monday if I could give all of the relevant information by Friday at noon. I departed with a list of information and chores to do by Friday at noon. Henry was quite systematic. He made me write down everything that happened. From the minute Brad greeted us at the airport to the moment I was handed the documents indicating that I was trapped in a foreign nation without finances. In addition, I compiled a complete inventory of our assets. All of the money I spent in the Dominican Republic, the expenditures of returning from the island, and any common possessions that were not at home when I returned. My haste to complete these tasks was ineffective. On Monday morning, as I was waiting for a call from Abbott's office indicating that the documents were ready for signing, our administrator walked into my office less. "There is a man here who wants to see you. He does not express what he wants." "Okay, Sarah, I'll go outside. Henry warned me that Gwen may file for divorce first. He persuaded me that it would be better this way. This route. We understand their intentions. It also puts you in the position of the injured person. She terminates the marriage, not you. Although it appears to be legal, receiving the paperwork is nonetheless frustrating. As I read the paperwork, I became enraged and nearly called Gwen to cut me off. Fortunately, my head kicked in and I evaded the trap. One of my friends informed me that his wife's lawyer provoked him in the same manner. My friend called his estranged wife and began ranting at her. The next morning, he was served with a no-contact order, which was used in court as evidence of his hostile behavior. I presented the documents to my lawyer, and as they say, the games began 2 months after I was officially told. My lawyer and I were seated in court waiting for the judge when he arrived. I was nearly speechless. Of course, there had to be a female judge. I've heard horrific stories about men getting swindled in divorce court. I prepared for the worst. Gwen's lawyer submitted the list of demands. Gwen couldn't look at me as her lawyer spoke for her. I saw Dirk Brad was not in the courtroom. They made a good decision. My lawyer explained our side of the situation. The judge was not surprised by any of this because all of the details had already been given and discussed. Their lawyer had the option to raise objections. Finally, we'll say our part. The judge asked Gwen a question using her maiden name, the exact way Gwen's attorney addressed her. "Miss Harper, you are not alleging Mr. Lester's control. Did you simply fall in love with Mr. Bradley Parker and decide to leave your husband because you loved another man?" Gwen and her lawyer exchanged a brief look. Then she said, "Yes, Your Honor. There was no violence." "Thank you for your honest response. If there is one thing I would not accept in my gym, it is people making false claims of violence to gain an advantage." The judge paused for a while to reread her notes. "This court grants the divorce. No alimony will be ordered starting immediately. Each party will keep their retirement savings and personal items. Miss will receive half of any assets held jointly, Harper's share. She shall reimburse Mr. Lester for the $9,000 he spent on his wrecked vacation, as well as any costs incurred during his stay and the cost of returning. Miss Harper will also pay both parties legal fees and threatens to use the money to pay rent for 7 months. The time between when she left the house and when their rental home's current contract expires." The judge stared directly at Gwen. "Young lady, you say here that you loved your husband. If this is how you treat the man you love, God help the one you do not love. I may have been knocked down with a single feather out of 20,000, half of ours. Let's use our savings to buy a house." She had to pay me over $16,000 as the lawyer, and I walked out. Gwen could be overheard calling after me. "Forrest." As I left the courtroom, I noticed Brad sitting on the bench. He began to stand up, but I was already in his way. "You know she's going to cheat on you too." I left on the street. I asked Henry if I might buy him lunch. We crossed the street and went to a diner. I nearly passed out when I realized the judge was a woman. I expected to be undressed. That's when you go wrong. For 2 reasons. It's always an elderly judge who glances at his lovely wife and gives her everything clean. Judy Carter is the best judge we could have. You knew we'd end up in her hallway. Why haven't you told me? I didn't want to set any expectations or let you relax in case she decided to question you, Henry explained. Judge Carter has been married to the same man for 40 years and loves him. She is a respected judge. and he works as a mechanic at a local shop that supplies Caterpillar parts. But it's a marriage of equals. Barry Carter is a great guy who remains humble even in the club. Despite his 5 handicaps, he wins every darn tournament. Henry paused to sip his coffee. Let me tell you one final story. Just because you got burned on your first trip down the wedding aisle, but you should know that there are wonderful girls out there. The judge and Barry are attending a dance party at the country club, sharing a table with my wife and another couple, one of the local wealthy individuals. The owner of a car dealership in the city approaches Barry, ignores him, and invites the judge to dance. Barry is not the type of person who will let himself be passed over, but he is brave enough to let his wife, Judy, resolve the situation. "Has anyone ever taught you manners?" she asked. "No gentleman would ask a lady to dance without first asking her date. Go away to pray. You never end up in my courtroom. If that happens, inform your lawyer that you require another judge, because I am. I cannot guarantee you a fair hearing." The judge leaned over to kiss her husband. She understands that some people underestimate her husband simply because he works with his hands. I laughed as I imagined it was only half an hour in Carter's courtroom, and I knew exactly how it happened. "You're not like most lawyers. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm disparaging your profession, but now it was Henry's turn to laugh. My dad worked on the assembly line at CAT for over 30 years. My mom stayed home and raised 5 kids. The day I went to law school, my dad hugged me and congratulated me and said, 'Don't be a loser. He's 90, but I know he'll still kick my butt if he has to.' That keeps me in line." We finished lunch. I thanked him again and we went our separate ways. It's time to start a new life. Colleagues and other well-meaning acquaintances tried to connect me with the women they thought I needed to meet to get through my grief. The problem with all these acquaintances was that I didn't need a new relationship yet. Everything was still too fresh. I just needed love. And I couldn't imagine going out with my sister cousin or any other colleague if I was only interested in quick love that didn't develop into something more. Call me sensitive, mister? Sometimes I did have love most often by hanging out at local bars with a reputation for hooking up. I had enough free time to start taking dance lessons, but there are always risks when it comes to being a ladies' man. One evening, I spent an hour having a great time with a particularly well-built lady. We were already heading out when her left hand caught the light. And I saw character. Mystic lightning around the 4th finger, a clear sign of a recently removed ring. "Are you married?" She gave me a deer-in-the-headlights look and stuttered her answer. "Yes, but my husband is on a business trip. Where is he? In Afghanistan. He's in the army. I swear I've never been so close to hitting a woman, not even Gwen in all her antics. You should be ashamed. Your husband is risking his life, and you're looking for someone to sleep with." She began to cry before collapsing onto the sidewalk. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm such a lousy wife." I took her up from the sidewalk. She gazed into my eyes and started babbling. "He departed 5 months ago, and I worry every day. I was lonely, and a couple of guys at work started hitting on me. I didn't want to cheat with someone I'd have to see again. So, I went out tonight. This was the first time, I swear, I needed to feel like a woman. I wasn't even sure if I could have love. But I longed to feel a man's hug or kiss. God, what a shame." I gazed across the street to the late dinner. "Let's go get some coffee. Put on your ring and let's go." I handed her a clean handkerchief, which I always had with me. "Draw your tears before we enter." Kelly and I remained at the cafe for the next hour, and she told me everything about Sergeant John Tyler. She told me about 2 jerks at her office, including her supervisor, who tried to compel her to go out with them. I persuaded Kelly to talk to HR. I took Kelly home. We decided to meet for lunch next Saturday. I wanted to see how she handled these 2 bloodsuckers, and I was going to make sure she did. We met for coffee and sandwiches about once every 3 weeks. We were just talking. Kelly stated that the business reassigned her to another department and disciplined both men. She walked into a cafe one day, and everyone could see how happy she looked. John will be home in 2 weeks. I congratulated her. He expressed his happiness for her, and I mentioned that I thought this would be our final dinner. She appeared pained by this, but understood. "Thank you for being my friend, Les. You helped me with those 2 at work and explained how I could have lost the best thing I had. John is in love. You were there when I needed a real buddy. I will not forget about this. I'll miss her." However, I exited the restaurant with positive feelings. I stepped out of my office building and was welcomed by a 6'3" Highlander dressed in a desert outfit. I knew him from images Kelly had given me. "Are you Thomas Lester?" I did not reach out, preferring to let him dictate the pace of the conversation. "Can we talk somewhere?" "There is a bar. 4 blocks south. I can meet you there." Cold. We proceeded to our cars and he followed me in. I treated myself to the first round. Kelly informed me what had happened. I wanted to look you in the eyes and hear it directly from you. I have to admit it's insane to come home and hear from your wife that she went on dates to sleep with someone. Well, it did not happen. At least, not with me, and I doubt it would be with anyone else. She experienced a moment of vulnerability. She loves you. Why didn't you take advantage of the situation? My ex-wife cheated on me. It was like, hey, I can't do that to another guy. Especially someone in a uniform. Have you ever served? No, I lacked the courage to take chances. You did. I'm just glad there are some guys ready to do it. I'm beginning to question my sanity and continue this. I was putting my life and marriage at risk there. It would be different if someone cared deeply about the fight. I'm considering going back to university. When I entered the Army, I was pursuing an electrical engineering degree. If you decide to attend Purdue, please let me know. I have contacts there who could aid you if you decide to apply. It can't hurt. I handed him one of my business cards. I do not think we can be friends, Lester. I can't look at you without thinking about Kelly nearly cheating on me with you. I appreciate everything you did, but I just can't. After a little period while we sipped our beers, John broke the stillness. Lester, you're an unusual guy. You are missing out on the opportunity to sleep with a woman like Kelly. You're sitting here and haven't asked me about my time there. You can't fathom how many men inquire, as if that's what we should talk about. I believe it is entirely up to you whether or not to discuss it. I'm not going to have the dubious pleasure of hearing your combat stories. He finished his beer, shook my hand, and thanked me for everything before leaving. I got one letter from Kelly. John Tyler was retiring from the Army. They were heading to Texas, where he hoped to continue his studies at Texas A&M and have a child as soon as he graduated. She included another thank you in her letter. I wish them the best. Hopefully, they can serve as an example of how a person can be tempted and almost fall, but then learn from their mistakes and end up with a good marriage. Despite my own background, I continue to aspire for romance. A month later, someone came to my home early on a Sunday morning. I opened the door, astonished to see Gwen's younger brother standing in front of me, peering over his shoulder. I noticed her father sitting in his car in my driveway less. Dad and I would like to speak. Okay, Pete, you can come in. And your father is as welcome in my home as I was at his. Tell him to stay in the car while you enter. Pete returned to the car and spoke with his father. I didn't hear what they said, but the body language said it all. I resisted the impulse to show the old man the middle finger. Pete returned alone. I let him in and served him a cup of coffee. I've always liked him and got along with Pete. You enraged your father so much out on the street. Going home will not be a pleasant experience. Sorry for that. But if he had just let me go a bit, I'd have done the same. Now that I'm no longer dating your sister, I don't have to pretend. Why don't you explain why you're here? This is about Gwen. My dad and I came here yesterday to pick her up from that fool Brad's place. He hit her. Sorry to hear this, but what does it have to do with me? We separated a year ago, then divorced more than 6 months ago. Father and I were hoping you'd consider bringing her back. She cried all night, screaming she wants to be your wife, and that leaving was the biggest mistake she's ever made. I'm sorry that she was wounded. I really wish no harm to anyone, especially someone I once loved. But I can never return to Gwen. I can never trust her. She shattered my heart in half. Where is she now? At the Holiday Inn. She couldn't run into you, but she didn't mind when we said we'd visit you again. I apologize. Good luck finding a safe location for her, but it will not be present with me. I stood up from the table and extended my hand to indicate that the conversation had ended. Pete stood and shook my hand. There was sadness in his eyes. For what it is worth, I don't blame you. But I had to try. My sister ruined everything. You're a good guy who always treats her well. I'm not sure what's on her mind to trash all of this for less. I did not walk Pete to the door. I did not want to see their father again. I heard a car start and drive away from the driveway. This was the last time I heard from this family. Mutual friends informed me that Gwen had returned north and gotten a job at Northbrook, an all-state. Grace and I met during a performance on the University of Illinois campus. No, this was not a rock concert. It was a chamber orchestra from Chicago. The evening festivities featured variations on my folio by Salieri Gimignano and other Italian composers. A petite, pixie-like woman sat next to me in the theater, reminding me of images I had seen of Twiggy, Patty Boyd, and other stylish British models. Grace began the conversation during the interval by asking if I was enjoying the show. I discovered that she was a graduate student studying graphic arts and played the cello, and she agreed to let me buy her a drink after the concert. We got a drink at a neighboring tavern and swapped stories. With the name Grace, you would expect her to come from a pious household. But this was not the case. Her parents named her after Grace Slick, the lead singer for Jefferson Airplane. She grew raised in what could be considered a commune outside of Carbondale. She was really fascinated when I told her I lived in a farmhouse. Have you got a garden? I'm surrounded by my landlord's cornfields. There is a plot of land, perhaps 40 by 40 feet, where the prior renter grew vegetables, but I have never planted in the 5 years I've lived there. There are only weeds left now. This is a shame. Gardening may be deeply soothing, almost spiritual. Not to mention how good the fresh food tastes. We discussed various issues until it was time to depart. I walked her home and was greeted with a nice peck on the cheek as well as her phone number. She was unlike any female I had ever met. The next day, I contacted and we decided to go to the opening of a student art exhibition on campus the next weekend. It's been an excellent week at work. I was promoted and received a fair wage rise. All of the extra time I've put in since my divorce is paying off. On Saturday afternoon, I picked up Grace from her apartment. It was a lovely April day, and I was tempted to recommend spending it on the outdoor patio with a beer. Instead of staying indoors, observe student work. 30 minutes later, after traveling through the first gallery, I wished I'd suggested going to the pub virtually every day at work. Paintings and sculptures appeared to be produced solely for the purpose of shocking. If this is considered art and something linked with elegance, our date will soon come to an end with little prospect of meeting again. I suppose I'd like to depart now. Grace gripped my hand. Can we decide after the next gallery whether you still feel the same way? We can leave. Our hands were still clasped. Grace pushed me into the next room. I looked around reluctantly, but was pleasantly surprised by what I discovered. It was art, at least from my perspective. Instead of being controversial, the work was meant to inspire or provoke thought. We strolled through the room, looking at each piece and exchanging ideas until we came across a painting of two naked people, a woman behind a man descending an open stairway. Despite their bareness, their faces drew my attention. What were their thoughts? Then I observed a ring on the woman's left hand as she held onto the railing. The man's finger was lacking a ring. I stared at this painting till I looked at the card to see the title of the picture and the artist's name. Grace Powell's La Dernière Opera. MIDI outfit, Amaru is an oil-on-canvas painting. Adams. I looked at Grace. You created this drawing. Grace flashed me an expressive smile. Yes, I understand. Do you like it? That is wonderful. Is the title in French? What does this mean? Last day for lovers? Now their facial expressions make sense. It's over for them. Why? I can't make a decision. What are your thoughts? I knew exactly what I was thinking, but I wasn't ready to share. I will inform you later. Did you show live models to other students? They stood on the stairs for hours, posing. Let's head to the last gallery. I'd like to show you something else. Grace's second painting was shown on the last gallery's wall. It was very different from the prior one. It was an animation depicting a massive aquarium filled with hundreds of various fish and marine monsters. My God, this is wonderful. This is something that my niece would really love. You are incredibly talented. Why is there so much good stuff here but so much rubbish in the first gallery? Grace giggled before responding. The majority of us believe that the professor curating the exhibition is taking use of the show's shock value to establish himself among Chicago's avant-garde artists. I hope this does not sound mean. On the contrary, it simply proves your good taste. I hope you do not mind if I send a letter to the university proposing to amend the gallery policies. We finally arrived at the pub and spent a few hours drinking, eating, and getting to know each other better. The more Grace opened up, the more I was impressed by how down-to-earth this young woman was, especially given where she grew up. Grace put everything back in its proper position. A commune is not a place of leisure. My parents were devoted and monogamous. You could count my partners on one hand. Nonetheless, your photograph of the two lovers was incredibly romantic. So don't confuse quantity with quality. My two previous long-term loves deserve to be in the Love Hall of Fame. That's not what the guy wants to hear. Grace noticed the expression on my face. Sorry, less. It didn't happen that way. Love should not be a competition, you know. It involves two people sharing. That's what I meant when I said these two belong in the Hall of Fame. They understood that it wasn't about their or my pleasure, but about our shared one. The evening was becoming cooler. It was time to move indoors. Les, would you mind if we finished earlier tonight? I have a project to complete by Monday. I should not have spent the entire day joking around, but I wanted to spend time with you. I agreed. What can I say? It was a fantastic first date, and I did not want to spoil it. Grace asked if we could have dinner together next Wednesday. We agreed that she would come to my house and I would cook dinner on Wednesday. Grace arrived at 5:30 as if to recruit. She was most interested in the weed-filled area that had once been a garden. It was surrounded by a 7-foot perimeter fence to keep deer out. Grace took a shovel from the garage and started digging along the fence. That's great. They buried the fence to keep the rabbits out. Grace washed up. We ate stew and drank beer, and I learned more about her by the time we finished dinner. We had discussed my reaction to her painting of two lovers, given how my marriage had ended. And Grace had apologized if the painting had upset me. She told more about herself. She speaks Italian and French, plays the cello, and is an accomplished artist. What can't you do? I'm no good at sports. I'm completely clumsy. I've tried tennis, softball, horse riding, you name. If it takes skill, I'm bad at it. I can run and swim. But I'm that person in the back row at yoga class who is falling. I tried not to laugh at this image. Grace for both of us. It's hard to believe. I mean, you have to have a hand coordination to play the cello and draw. I'm nervous. Don't even think about taking me on the dance floor. I'm a complete. My legs and arms are flailing. I can't draw if anyone is watching. The only reason I can play the cello is because I learned how to play cello in my room when no one was looking. Didn't you have a music teacher? My mom. Grace looked at the clock on the wall. I need to get back to town. But before I go, I want to ask you a huge favor. I'd like to plant a garden in your backyard. I'll do all the work by the seeds, pull the weeds, everything. I'll share the harvest with you. You can eat fresh food. We discussed logistics parameters regarding my privacy, and when she agreed to my demands, I agreed to her request. Of course, the prospect of fresh food was appealing, but the thought of Grace being around for the next 6 months was what convinced me. For the next 2 weeks, Grace would call me at work, get my consent to come over, and I would come home to find her working in our garden. She rented a cultivator. One day, she was halfway across the lot when I arrived. I asked if I could try it. She showed me how it worked, and I finished the job on Friday. Organic cow manure was piled in front of the house. We spent the whole weekend taking turns, wheelbarrows at a round, and mixing it into the soil, even though it was drizzling both days. When we finished, Grace surprised me by hugging me and kissing me. I've missed this so much since I left home. It makes me so happy, digging in the ground, smelling the soil. It's even better when the sun is shining, feeling its warmth on your body. It was my first time gardening, but I knew what she meant. Over the years, I watched my landlord plow and harvest the corn, but I was detached from it. Working on this small piece of land was direct contact with nature. We went into the house and made sandwiches for dinner. I sensed that Grace had something on her mind and waited for her to speak less. My lease is in 3 weeks. Right after the session, my roommates are graduating. Would you consider renting me a second bedroom here? I'll pay rent and share the cost of food and utilities. Grace's question upset me. I hope to be more than just a friend to Grace. We met periodically between Grace's studies, gardening, and my recent promotion. Free time was scarce. Apparently, Grace saw me as a roommate friend, and not in a romantic sense. But I liked her, and if this is a way to spend time together, then I will accept it, yes. We sat down and discussed the details. Division of responsibility, how much she will contribute to rent and groceries. I had to ask, what about guests? She looked at me in surprise. What do you mean, guests? Well, if one of us brings an overnight guest, how does that work? I've never had roommates other than my ex-wife, so the topic never came up. How do you and your roommates handle it now? Grace looked like she was about to cry. We ask all guests to respect other neighbors. This has never been a problem. I chose to drop the topic. I think you and I can sort things out if this ever comes up. Grace left soon after. She said she will be back next weekend to start planting. Saturday morning was warm and sunny, a lovely spring day. I had to work at the office and chose to ride 10 kilometers into town. I left a note on the kitchen table for Grace before I left, stating I'd be home by 4 and asking if we could have supper together. I turned on the computer. Nothing. Then it dawned on me. The ad people did an update this weekend and I completely forgot. This event made me joyful. Not all was lost. I enjoyed a lovely morning ride and will have a second one on the way home. And most significantly, I could enjoy a lovely day in the garden with Grace. I turned off the terminal and went out whistling, delighted, and went home. Strangely, the driveway gate was closed, and Grace's car was parked inside it. The garden was behind the home and not visible from the street. I carried the bike and stepped through the opening between the gates. I passed by the home and gazed into the garden. She was working in a hole that was absolutely naked, save for her gardening boots. Her back was to me as she moved down the row with a hoe. I watched her bend down and plant the seeds in the earth, then cover them with her hands. Grace had her summer clothing hanging from a shovel placed in the dirt nearby. It was presumably there so she could get dressed in case she heard someone unlock the driveway gate. There was time to take a step back and pretend I didn't notice anything because she was a friend, not a lover. I gave her one last look before turning to slowly and noisily stroll back up the driveway. But I didn't consider the large barn cat behind me. I stumbled over the cat, dropped my bike, and fell face first to the ground. Grace yelled, "Who is there?" I turned around just as she grabbed the dress. I could now see her clearly from the front. She had a great chest and flat stomach. She froze, realizing it was me. I stopped looking at her body and focused on her eyes. Those gorgeous forest eyes with a golden tinge captivated my attention. She started to pull on her dress. "Stop!" I sprang up and rushed into the yard, wrapping my arms around her body and kissing her. Grace kissed back. "I love you." Grace appeared surprised. "Is this true?" "Yes, it is true. I want to be your friend. But above everything, I want to be your lover. So why didn't you kiss me earlier? Because I am stupid." I wasn't sure how to tell my friend Grace that I wanted to be more than a friend. I did not want to lose your friendship, even if it was all I had. And I had the same thoughts about you. I believed I wasn't sexy enough for you to consider me a lover. Why did you think you were beautiful? Yes, certainly. I noticed the way you looked at Janice. Who is Janice? Nude on the stairs. My painting. And one night, I was looking through your photo album in the living room. There were several photos of Gwen, including one in a bikini. Heck, she and I could both be Victoria's Secret models. I don't have a chest, I do not have hips or a full buttocks, and my legs do not go up, as you like to imply. I pinched Grace's buttocks with both hands. "Listen, I am not going to lie to you. Gwen had an amazing body, but yours is as stunning, just in a different manner." "Okay, I believe you. What happens now? Maybe the landing will be delayed a little. I have something to show you." I did not wait for a response. I scooped her up and carried her inside the home, straight into the bedroom and into my unmade bed. Grace was dirty from gardening and I was sweaty from cycling. I hope all that happens means you will keep your workplace rather than converting it into your roommate's bedroom. You're reading my mind. Will you move here with me? Yeah. I still have more tasks to complete, so it won't be for another week and a half. Wait, I had to ask. It was killing me. How about bear gardening? Bear, there were a few things I did growing up. Gardening makes me feel more connected to the earth. Swimming is also an option. I grew up swimming naked on an artificial lake on the commune. I could not believe it. The first time I had to wear a swimsuit to swim, yikes. An hour later, I was enjoying an entirely new hobby, bear gardening. I could hardly wait to try bear swimming. I never considered letting Brad get away with wooing my wife. Even if Gwen was partly accountable for the dissolution of our marriage, but he deserved retribution for his obvious disregard for our vows and the ensuing pressure he put on my gullible wife to ruin me financially during the divorce. However, I've never been in a hurry to exact revenge. And now, my connection with Grace has progressed. Was it still important? Of course it was. I could easily have surprised him with a baseball bat and battered him badly, but I did not want to end up in jail. Guys like myself don't stay long in such situation, but in today's online environment, people are quite easy to spy on. Since my divorce with Gwen, I've spent an hour each week using search engines, LinkedIn, Facebook, and other portals that allowed me to comfortably exist in Brad's world under a different name. I kept a low profile, never doing anything malicious, and waited for the proper time to act. I've heard the term revenge is best served cold. Is that true? In my instance, this was certainly the case. 2 years after my divorce, an excellent opportunity presented itself. Brad was then working in the art department of a well-known conservative brokerage firm and engaged to another woman. I resolved to save his naive bride the agony of divorcing him. It would be preferable to schedule this before the wedding. A few weeks before Brad's wedding to this lovely young lady, it was time to act. It cost me $4,000, but it was worthwhile. There were few secrets regarding Brad's life, and Brad, with his ego and sexual preferences, was almost too readily persuaded by what I had planned. Every Wednesday, many guys from Brad's office went drinking at a local hotel. It was your standard men's evening. The majority of the guys went after an hour or two, but 1 or 2 single guys, including Brad, would stay until 8 or 9. The Chicago girl hired to entice Brad did not have to work hard to get him into her hotel room. Brad noticed her while seated at the bar, and after saying goodbye to his last colleague, he asked Lacey if he might buy her a drink. She replied sure, and for the following 15 minutes, she let herself be swayed by his slick talk at her suggestion. They purchased additional rounds, and Brad agreed. Lacey volunteered to complete them in her room. 2 small hidden cameras were mounted in the room, ready to record the action on the bed from various perspectives. The following day, Lacey and I watched 2 videos. We agreed that I could only use screenshots and her face would not appear in them. It wasn't difficult to gather over 20 stunning photos of Brad in all his glory. Brad's boss, his fiancée, her father, and a few close friends received the best screenshots of his love for Lacey. Brad. I debated whether to tell Brad that I was the one who set him up. In the end, I didn't call myself a coward, but I didn't want to escalate the revenge. I had much more to lose. Now consider my relationship with Grace. In any case, my revenge was fulfilled, and Brad departed town with his tail between his legs for the next 15 months. We lived together and loved each other on the farmstead. It was the happiest time in my life up until that point. Grace educated me a lot, made me read amazing works, and broadened my horizons. I met her parents at the commune on the first Independence Day. Again, I was unprepared for how they astonished me throughout the weekend. Who would have guessed that their neighborhood would host the best Independence Day extravaganza I had ever seen? The first time I attempted skinny dipping, it was late at night and everyone was sleeping. It was just me and Grace in the water. It was different, but very wonderful. We were on the back patio drinking beer before supper, a little over a year after she moved in with me, and we were still madly in love. Lest today, I was offered a job, based on the tone of your voice. I wouldn't enjoy it, would I? I was offered the opportunity to work on an animated film. The company Enlightenment is based in France. They are developing a new animated film based on Dickens's A Christmas Carol. I'll have to relocate to Paris for nearly a year. During development, I knew Grace had little prospects in central Illinois, but Paris required me to put on grown-up pants, but that would have been difficult. Wow, this sounds like an incredible opportunity. I suppose I'm surprised, though. I had no idea you were applying for opportunities outside the United States. I did not apply. It came from a friend of a friend who was already present. One of my teachers distributed samples of my work to various individuals. It circulated, and they called me today. I thought you were discussing freelancing. You can stay here. Freelancing is difficult if you lack a reputation. This will help me establish that reputation when I return. Or you might discover that Paris is more exciting than Peoria and Bloomington. How to keep them at the farm after they've visited Paris. I thought about it, darling. You always said you felt I was very down to earth. You know how much I enjoy the farm, and you should know how much I adore you. When do you need to respond? Until the end of this week. You already know who I am. I will not say no, and I will fully back you. Give me 2 days to deal with this. Then I will tell you that it is normal, and you can respond. Grace stood up from her lounge chair and sat on my lap, her arms around my neck and her lips against mine. I'll miss her. I debated whether to inform Grace about her present. The diamond ring was in my gun safe. 2 days later, when I told Grace she could confirm her participation in Illumination, I didn't mention the ring. Grace departed the day after she graduated. I tried my hardest to hold back, but it wasn't easy. I don't think I fooled anybody, but I think Grace appreciated my ability to remain composed. Grace left her car and most of her personal possessions, including her art equipment, at my place. Mother Grace held me hard and murmured into my ear, "She loves you. Trust her." I took her to O'Hare Airport and kissed her farewell. I detest this airport so much, ever since Gwen abandoned me there all those years ago. And here it is again, only this time my love flies away, and I stay. We exchanged letters, photos, and emails, spoke on Skype at least once a week, and planned my next vacation to Paris. None of this helped when I got depressed. Much of the garden we planted together that year had rotted in the fields. One of my coworkers came to my house one afternoon and, seeing the state of the garden, offered to pick up the harvest. I was unconcerned and said it was fine. Debbie King, one of our department's administrative assistants, was a widow with 2 sons who lost her husband to severe hepatitis. She and her sons visited my house on Saturday, and the 3 of them spent several hours harvesting. "What will you do with all these vegetables?" I asked. "My neighbor will teach me canning. I need to buy a few cans for canning and store food for the winter." "You know what? I have at least 3 dozen cans for rent. Simply promise that if we need them next year, you will return them." "Why won't you need them next year? You never know." Grace was a conservative. I just poured beer while she was working. Debbie looked at me. "She loves you less. She'll be back." I turned and walked back into the house, speaking to myself. "Hope so." Debbie left soon after with her boys, a few boxes of harvest and 40 canning jars. Grace had planned to take 10 days off between Christmas and New Year's weekend and was planning to fly home during that time. So we decided early November would be a good time for me to fly to Paris. Grace will have to work during the week, but we will have evenings and 2 weekends to spend together. I boarded a direct flight to Paris, crossing my fingers that my O'Hare Airport wouldn't be jinxed. Grace was standing at the customs exit at Charles de Gaulle Airport waiting for me. She was so beautiful. We hugged and kissed, to which several people applauded. I took my luggage and we took a taxi to her. Not even 2 minutes after we closed the door behind us, we were both bare and exploring each other's bodies with our eyes, mouths, and hands. I picked her up, holding her tightly to me. "Where's the bedroom?" Grace laughed. "Here she is. Pull the mattress out of the sofa." Only then did I look around. Grace was living in a sort of mini-efficiency. I pulled the mattress out of the couch and fell onto the most uncomfortable bed I've ever had to lie on. Grace continued to laugh. "You should have told me. I would book a hotel room. No. I want you to have the full experience. You must know how I live in the bosom of French luxury. Plus, it's better than some of my colleagues. I have a bathroom with a bath. The 2 girls don't even have a bathroom. They have to go to a common corridor. That'll do." I hugged Grace and pulled her onto my lap. I woke up in a minute to get my bearings. After using the restroom, I found the kitchen, which was just a counter with a small refrigerator on the bottom and a hot stove on top. Grace left instructions on how to use the coffee maker. There was half a baguette on the cutting board, and there was jam in the refrigerator. I took a bath, shaved, and got dressed. The key hung by the door. I decided to spend some time walking around the area. At 4 o'clock, I was back in the apartment reading the book I had brought when Grace burst through the door. "That's all. You will not be out of my sight for the next 64 hours. It suits me. We don't even have to leave this room. Have you seen the inside of my doll refrigerator? We will die of hunger. Isn't there delivery in Paris? Is there a Domino's here?" I was joking. Of course it was Paris. I don't know. But no one eats here until 7 in the evening. Love me. And then let's go to dinner. Grace was already undressing when she said this. I couldn't argue with her logic. We spent Saturday at the Orsay Museum and had a nice lunch near Notre Dame. Several of Grace's colleagues wanted to meet me. Grace declined the Friday meeting because she wanted us to have a quiet evening together, but agreed to meet them on Saturday evening when we entered the restaurant that evening. About a dozen people were already sitting at a long table at the end of the room. It seemed Grace was popular among her colleagues, and many of them wanted to meet the man who had won her heart. After introductions, handshakes with the men, and blowing kisses with the women, we sat in small groups. I'm with an English woman, Holly, a Japanese girl, Megumi, and a Frenchman, Claude. Both Megumi and Claude spoke excellent English. I had a harder time understanding Holly than any of them. Periodically, Grace moved between the other two groups, both of which spoke French. The waiter took our drink orders. Various plates of appetizers appeared and disappeared. Holly and I had a fun debate about who was more responsible for the best rock and roll, the Americans or the British. Claude sided with Holly, arguing that the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, recorded in France, was the best rock album of all time. Megumi my side, saying that she grew up listening to her mother's vinyl recording of Cheap Trick's Live at Budokan, and opined that Elvis and Chuck Berry started it all. It was all great fun. Nobody took it seriously. As a joke, I once asked Grace Baby who was the greatest rock singer of all time. Grace didn't hesitate to respond. Not only the greatest woman, but the best singer of any gender. Mrs. Slick, the conversation shifted from music to sports, specifically soccer, when Grace suddenly spoke up in French and began lecturing one of the French males. I've never seen Grace so angry. I didn't understand a word. Everyone else spoke French and appeared surprised. Even the adjoining table paused to listen. After a whole minute, Grace apologized to her colleagues. Even though I understood the word sorry and was told we were leaving outside the restaurant, I said, "What was that?" Jean-Paul is one of those French idiots who can't stop embarrassing Americans. People like him are in the minority, as far as I am aware. He was aware that you did not speak French, and he took advantage of the chance to express some disparaging remarks about American guys, specifically you. I heard that and couldn't leave it at that. I hope you don't mind my defending your honor. No, absolutely not. But why did we need to leave? Renee is such a jerk. She knew I couldn't tolerate Jean-Paul, but she invited him regardless. I do not want to lie to you. Jean-Paul is a rogue. He attempted to persuade me to go out with him. I told him no, because we were in a relationship and I would not break my pledge to you. We're still in a relationship, right? Yes, this is good. I was afraid to bring it up while we were separated. If you started dating, I would be unable to tolerate it from a distance. I have not changed my mind. I'll still be here when you return. I love you much less. Please never crush my heart. We reconnected with her colleagues before I left, this time without Jean, Paul, or Renee. Claude made it clear that not all French people shared Jean-Paul's anti-American beliefs. It turned out to be a fun and drama-free evening. Paris restored my conviction that Grace and I had a future. Given the frigid, lengthy winter on the prairie, the next 5 months seemed to last forever. Grace's stay over the holidays contributed to the promise of spring, which brought warmer weather and longer days. Then it was only a few months till it returned. I had intended to spend a week in Paris in March, but Grace claimed her schedule was already jam-packed because they were preparing to release the film for the holidays. The first cut of the visuals should be completed by mid-May. I had canceled my travel plans with luck. Grace will return home around mid-June. It was May 10th, a wonderful day. The temperature had risen to 77 degrees and the sun was shining. After 3 days of rain, I was heading home from work, excited to sit on the back porch with a drink of beer. I'm not sure why, but it made me feel closer to Grace. So the previous Saturday, I rented a cultivator and tilled the soil in my garden. Perhaps I will grow some tomatoes and green beans. Simple things. In the meantime, I'd take a beer and peek at what I thought was Grace's apartment. I came to a stop, shocked that the gate was closed. Instead of opening the gate and driving through, I simply walked to the back of the home. There in the garden, leaning on a hoe, stood the most gorgeous, completely nude garden nymph staring directly at me. We stood there for a half minute, staring at one another, before she dropped the hoe and raced into my arms. "Why are you here?" I asked. We concluded early 3 days ago. They only require half the staff for updates, corrections, and post-production. They asked for volunteers to help someone leave, so I volunteered. I packed my luggage, caught the first available aircraft to O'Hare, got the shuttle, and arrived home 2 hours ago. I hope it's okay. I wanted to surprise you. I hope you have no plans. Darn. This woman can be really naive at times. It was time to clear the situation. Yes, I have plans. Wait a minute. Grace was still holding me securely. I broke free from her grip, dashed into the house, and opened the safe. He returned, and the bear nymph was still standing there. I opened the box and bent down on one knee. "Will you marry me, Grace?" As previously said, she is prone to naivety. I completely astonished her with my proposal. It took her too long to discover her voice, but when she did, she used the correct words. "Yes, Thomas Lester, I love you very much. Maybe Sunday is too early. This will give us time to get a license and bring our parents here. We got married on Sunday in the backyard, the location of all places. It was a little chaotic, but the 20 or so visitors who included both sets of parents, several siblings, and a few others didn't seem to mind. Grace wore a dress despite the fact that it was a backyard wedding. I'm sure my folks appreciated it. Grace and I lived in the farmhouse until the harvest. We spent the summer searching for our own place. We located an ideal location a few miles north of town, about a quarter-mile from the river, far enough away to avoid flooding. It had 4 acres, 2 of which were wooded, with enough level ground to establish another garden for Grace. The lot included a double-wide trailer and a garage that was larger than the trailer. We'll turn the south half of the garage into a studio for Grace while still leaving room for both automobiles. We will sell the double-wide trailer as soon as the house is completed. The builders dug the foundation and constructed the basement walls. But the weather has changed, and we'll have to wait until spring before they resume construction. Grace freelances, but primarily concentrates on her painting. She's really good. For example, the Dernier Opera midi dress Amara sold for $8,000. So, between gardening, freelancing, and painting, Grace is busy yet joyful. It also allows her the possibility to become a housewife. Grace is pregnant with our first child, who is due in May. She wants 3 or 4 children, so we decided not to wait. Yes, I am a happy guy. I have a great, loving wife and a good-paying work that I like. I'm expecting a baby and have a lovely piece of property to share with my pixie wife. I only have one problem. How do I persuade Grace to wear her clothing when she's gardening? Next spring and summer, the construction workers will be here. Here is the next story. Many individuals need banal honesty since it allows them to sit down and chat quietly, express their concerns, and avoid future difficulties. My wife thought she could do whatever she wanted, but she had to pay a steep price for it, because I cannot stand betrayal. As I walked down the path to our flat with my wife, I shook my head in surprise. When she got to the door, she slammed it shut, leaving me standing outside my side and turning back to my car. As soon as I reached the end of the trail, her voice rang through the air again. "Where do you think you are going?" she exclaimed fiercely. "We haven't finished discussing this yet." "Connie, you slammed the door in my face," I said gently. I decided to return to the studio and work on the images I had taken earlier this afternoon. This will give you time to relax while I do some work. She spat out, "I don't need to calm down. I'm completely fine. The problem lies with you. You allowed that woman to get too close to you. Did you think I hadn't noticed how she was flirting with you? And you just sat there, smiling. I wonder what she would have done if I hadn't been present. There will be no infidelity in this marriage. If you cheat, you are out of the game. No apologies, no mercy." "Goodbye," I told Connie. She just hugged me, hoping to calm her down. "There is no reason for you to overreact. Everyone at work knows that I'm happily married. They see my wedding ring. Besides, Serena noticed you there. If there was anything going on between us, she would not have hugged me in front of you. Prostitutes will always remain prostitutes." She spit. "You need to remind them that you are married and that your wife takes her vows seriously. I hear and read about this all the time. Media and entertainment professionals believe they are superior to others." I slipped past her into the house, hoping our neighbors wouldn't hear the rest of her outburst. And you should be aware that woman is completely artificial. She's probably had breast implants, buttock implants, a nose job, lip injections, cheekbone enhancements, dental veneers, bleached hair, and even leg-lengthening surgery. She spit. There is nothing authentic about her. Honestly, I could look just as good if I went through all of those procedures. "Leg extensions?" I asked, baffled. "I thought that was a workout." "Don't be naive, Rob," she retorted. "You know how it's done. That woman is nearly 6 feet tall and unnaturally thin. She barely has any hips, but somehow has a prominent buttocks." "That's not natural, Connie. She was a volleyball and basketball player in college," I countered. "That's why she's tall and slender." It's from all the exercise." Connie stared at me as though I were a specimen under a microscope. This seems like a good moment to pause and introduce the characters in our little story. My name's Rob Short for Robin Delgado. I work as a photographer. I got into it as a kid when my parents gave me a cheap Kodak camera for Christmas. I started winning photo contests when I was a teenager, and by the time I was thinking about college, I knew I wanted to major in photography. In high school, I didn't join any clubs or teams, but I was always at school events taking pictures. Same with parties. I never went with friends or a date, just my camera. There was this girl, Melissa Mulligan, who found me interesting. She'd ask why I didn't get involved in anything. She thought it was strange that instead of participating, I preferred to observe from the sidelines. I've often pondered that question, and it wasn't until recently that I found an answer. It's not that I've been absent from life's experiences. Each of us has a role to fulfill in life's grand narrative. My role in this narrative is to capture events through photography, allowing those who weren't there to witness significant, beautiful, or tragic moments and experience them firsthand. In my experience, life can be harsh and unattractive, even at its most sublime. Yet, even amidst these moments, I find that beauty appears enhanced when viewed through my camera lens. Everything simply seems to gain a new perspective through the lens. My wife Connie and I have only been married for 2 years. I run my own agency with a team of photographers covering a range of subjects from fashion to editorial work. Frequently, models or artists concerned about their public image inform us of the parties or events they'll be attending. They or their representatives hire us to capture them at these events as we take numerous photos and allow them to select which ones to release to the media. This ensures that only flattering images are published. Conversely, when celebrities face a decline in their careers, magazines often enlist our services instead of their in-house photographers to capture unflattering moments, such as shots of Lindsay Blowhard intoxicated to support a particular narrative. Occasionally, there's a bidding war between the celebrities and the magazines for my work. If a magazine seeks unfavorable images, I provide them, and upon learning of this, the celebrity or their management may offer me more money than the magazine to prevent the photos from being published. This morning's photo shoot was for a magazine commercial. One of the models, Serena Veskovo, a tall Russian woman, almost 6 feet tall, hugged me after the shoot ended, as mentioned earlier. I've already collaborated with Serena a few times, and she's a really nice girl. A strong Russian accent gives her charm. In addition, her striking light gray eyes and long legs emphasize her attractiveness, despite the fact that Serena calls herself promiscuous. There are rumors that, in fact, at the age of 23, she has never had intimacy. Moreover, she is on her way to becoming a recognized supermodel. She makes strategic career moves and adorns the covers of numerous magazines. It's also helpful that she specifically asks me to work with her more often. I wouldn't mind using her successes for more important assignments, but that might not happen if Connie continues to interfere with our work together. Connie insists, "Just steer clear of that woman." I say, "Can you promise me that she's more composed now?" So I attempt to rationalize with her. "All right, Connie," I reply. "If you're okay with giving up the Christmas cruise I planned for us, then it's fine. We'll do things your way." "What do you mean?" she asks, looking at me with curiosity. "I often work with Serena." I explain. "She's rising in the modeling world, commanding high pay and considerable influence on her shoots. If she requests me specifically, I earn more, which means I can provide better for us. After all, we're married long after Serena's moment in the spotlight fades. We'll still be together. But if my presence on set with her, despite the fact that it's always crowded with numerous other people, bothers you, I'll stop working with her." "There were plenty of people there," she says hesitantly. "I counted 3 hairstylists, 2 makeup artists and their assistants, Serena's agent, representative, personal assistant, all of my assistants, the client's representative, the clothing designer and his team, plus 4 other models with their entourages. I detail I'd estimate close to 50 people were present, and that's typical." "Well, okay," she concedes reluctantly. "But I don't want you ever alone with that woman. I'm not thrilled about this because you're too engrossed in your cameras and career to notice the subtleties. But as a woman, I understand how women think. And that woman wants you, I assure you." I said, "I won't allow myself to be in a situation where Serena and I are alone. Why don't you go prepare a nice brunch while I work on editing the photographs to sell and make some money? I retreated to my office and powered up the computer. Luckily, the editing software I had at home matched what I used in the office, allowing me to work remotely. As I tinkered with the morning shoot, my iPhone rang. "Rob, where on earth are you?" demanded the caller. "I explicitly told you we needed those test shots ASAP." It was Friedrich Bontemps, Serena's manager, a person I couldn't stand. His faux French accent grated on my nerves. "I shouldn't have let you handle the photos. You're not established enough. He criticized you, lacked the experience in portfolio. Now I'll have to redo the entire shoot." I addressed him as Fred, I began. He detested the moniker Fred, insisting on the pronunciation Friedrich. Ironically, this only highlighted his foolishness, as the pronunciation rendered his name German, a national party not particularly cherished by the French. Yet it was all moot, because his identity was a facade. Fed up with his antics, I resolved to confront him. "It's pronounced Friedrich," he retorted. "I am French, Fred. The internet is a great resource." I countered with the correct skills. You can unearth practically anything, even the motivation behind actions. Unfortunately, I couldn't identify the reason here. Motive for what? He wondered why someone born Fred Thompson from Corpus Christi, Texas, would masquerade as a French modeling agent. I stated, "There are countless images of you from high school. Were you not participating in the drama club? It seems your father wasn't satisfied with your indifference in football. Sports are a big deal in Texas, aren't they?" There was only quiet on the other end of the telephone. Iran discovered a video of you playing in the musical Oklahoma. You were such a fantastic singer back then. Freddie. As for why you changed from being a free member, I mean Frederick by name, I couldn't uncover any information onto your current identification. It remains a mystery. Furthermore, I was unable to verify your stated degree in fine arts and fashion design, despite examining the college listed on the diploma hanging in your office. Although the college lists you as a past student, it mentions that you dropped out because of budgetary constraints. It appears that your father did not support your pursuit of fashion design, though I could be mistaken. "What is your intention?" he inquired slowly. "Are you going to distribute this knowledge everywhere?" "Not at all," I reassured him. "I firmly believe in live and let live." Friedrich refers to lists of qualifications or background. You and I both thrive in our professions, or at least I'm trying to. All I want for is the opportunity to do my job. In fact, I'm working on test pictures as we speak. Remember I told you'd have them ready for your client first thing in the morning, right? "Yes," he said with a Texan accent creeping through. "I indicated earlier that you would have test pictures by tonight," I informed him. "Actually, I'll email you the first 5 photos straight now, with a few clicks on the computer." I sent them to his workplace. We were silent for a few minutes before he exclaimed, "Wow, Friedrich, that did not sound French." "I was joking, these photos are great," he praised. "I do not know how, but—" Wait a moment. While I waited, he was working on something at his desk. "Serena has never looked better, and it's not simply because of the lighting in the images. Whatever you're doing is working. I'd love it if you could finish the rest of the photographs on time. I will not bother you anymore. And Rob?" He stopped, considering keeping my secret. "Thanks." I heard a knock on my office door shortly after I hung up the phone. I opened it and saw Connie and her best friend Jessica waiting there. "Where is lunch?" I inquired. That's what Connie replied. "I got caught up talking to Jess." "Why didn't you mention the party tonight at the Dalton Hotel?" I stated why I chose to focus on the one in the book Cadillac instead. "There are some notable politicians anticipated to attend. History might be in the making." "So you're saying one of those bigwigs could be honest?" she interjected. "That would be a first, but unlikely. They are all dishonest, Rob. You should switch to cover the opposite party. Jason Hamburger will be present. You understand how much I admire him. Remember what I told you when we were married? Sorry, but Ed has already been assigned to cover that party." I responded, "My gear is put up at the other hotel. Changing assignments so late would be disruptive." Her expression plummeted. "Next time there's an occasion, I'll not only shoot him, but also bring you along and introduce you," I comforted her. She returned to speaking with Jessica for the remainder of the afternoon. And I never had lunch. Jessica remarked, "Wow, you are so fortunate. Your hubby is quite beautiful." We watched as Rob picked up a couple of camera bags, loaded them into the trunk of his Mustang, and drove off to the dole party at the hotel. "His profession is incredible," she added. "Simply think about it. This morning he had a fashion shoot with Serena Vescovo, followed by an evening party attended by prominent lawmakers. I said, 'It's not that great.' This woman was all over him this morning. Every chance she got, she draped herself over him like a cheap suit. And she even had the audacity to gaze at me with those enormous gray eyes, like a territorial cat establishing her territory. But Rob loves you. Foolish. Jessica told me that he would never cheat on you. Yeah, I understand." I exhaled. But she was really getting on my nerves. Furthermore, if he genuinely loved me, he would have arranged for me to meet Jason Hamster. So this dude is the embodiment of beauty. "I'm not sure," Jessica said. "He seems me as a bit untrustworthy, like the type who would flee at the first sign of difficulty. I can image you two squabbling about makeup sharing. I can't image getting old with him or feeling safe in his embrace. And let's be honest, Rob makes an excellent husband. I just can't see Jason Hamster in that light. You are correct on all of these points," I acknowledged. "Plus, my feelings for Jason aren't that serious, more of a fantasy. But you do remember that Jason Hamster is my wild card, right? What exactly do you mean by your wild card?" She inquired about when Rob and I began dating. We discussed our imaginary crushes. He told me about his dream woman, and I told him about my ideal man. It was all in good humor. I jokingly suggested that if he ever met Eva Mendes, he could sleep with her. And if I ever ran across Jason Hamster, he couldn't blame me for anything. Jessica and I laughed before she abruptly stood up. "Let's go," she said, leading the way back to Rob's office and opening the door. She went straight for the desk next to the computer. There she obtained a photographer's pass. "Yes, I see," I responded. "Rob always has access to the most exciting events. I'll ask him if you want to keep the pass as a keepsake or something. Even if they are not in use, they must occasionally be returned." "You're missing the point," she explained. "There is no name or photo on this pass. It just reads, 'Photographer from RTI Media.' Anyone could make use of it. You should attend the party and at least catch a look of Jason Hammaker in person. Who knows? You could even get to meet him." Her smile made me feel as if I had been struck by lightning. It was a solid plan. I was acquainted with all of Rob's photographers and the majority of his staff. So once I arrived at the party, if anyone had any questions, I could simply socialize with them for a bit. Maybe I'd do it anyhow till Jason showed up. If he did, Rob was preoccupied with another event, so he didn't notice my disappearance. Furthermore, he generally arrived late from these meetings, obsessed with catching every conceivable photo and methodically preparing his equipment. "I'm going forward with it," I announced. Jessica's face brightened up. She said, "Keep me posted. I guess I should go home and cook dinner for my less-than-glamorous plumber hubby. Enjoy socializing with the affluent and famous." I contacted my hairstylist right away, making up an emergency and explaining why. She agreed to accelerate my hair and makeup in exchange for my promoting her services. I rushed to her salon, wearing my most expensive designer shoes and a new little black dress. 2 hours later, I arrived at the hotel with my invitation in hand and was taken to the main hall where the party was taking place. When I displayed my photographer's pass, the security and staff paid me little attention. Unlike the other visitors who were given explicit instructions on where they could and could not go. It seems that I had slipped under their radar. The event appeared to consist of 3 distinct groups. First, there were the non-celebrity visitors, who were either wealthy contest winners or linked with event sponsors. They effectively functioned as background, filling the space and providing the sense of a large crowd. However, their movements were limited. The second group included the truly notable people, those who made the occasion memorable. They received unrestricted access and VIP treatment. Finally, there was the staff and support team, where I seemed to fit in. Our presence was strictly utilitarian. We were there to work and had complete freedom to roam around and complete our tasks. I approached the lead photographer at Rob's party to greet him. I'd known Ed from the beginning of my relationship with Rob. He's an elderly gentleman and an accomplished photographer, but he lacks Rob's artistic talent. While Ed is undeniably talented, Rob has a distinct artistic vision. I spent about an hour mingling with Ed and his team before the venue filled up. During my first hour of networking, I started talking to other people. I met a range of people. It was clear when a celebrity entered since they were immediately surrounded by photographers and paparazzi all night. I saw a few TV personalities, but I was not interested in them. I was just there for one reason, to see Jason Hamster signing autographs or to speak with him, which would have exceeded my expectations. However, I had an awful experience. I looked over my shoulder and saw a large crowd encircling someone as I tried to figure out who it was. I made eye contact with Serena Volkova. I really shouldn't have been surprised to see her there. She was surrounded by reporters and a few photographers, but Ed was not among them. Given Serena's growing popularity, he should have been. I did see one of his aides present, which led me to conclude that Ed agreed with my assessment that Serena was not worth the attention. As time passed, the gathering around her thinned as additional celebrities came. Only a few individuals remained around her, hoping to engage in conversation. I kept my gaze set on the doorway, anticipating Jason's arrival. Serena disappeared from my consciousness till I heard her voice behind me. "Are they fooling me?" she questioned, her thick Russian accent visible before turning to face her. I couldn't deny her beauty, but my dislike for her persisted. Her plastic surgeon, whoever they were, did an excellent job, leaving no apparent signs of surgery or scars on her face or body. Even when standing face to face, her appearance appeared completely genuine, including her height and bust. I disliked her much more in that moment. "I'm very certain they're all fooling you," I responded, completely unaware of the context of her question. "Is it correct that Rob will not be attending this party?" she pressed. "Yes, Rob won't be here," I replied, imitating her accent aggressively. "So why are you here?" she persisted, before she could complete her invasive question. A commotion arose from the entryway. Jason Hammaker entered the room and I turned, my jaw falling. Unlike the other men, Jason was not dressed in a suit. Instead, he wore a lengthy hockey shirt with his name, which is Canadian. It was no surprise that he enjoyed hockey, as seen by his rhinestone-studded jersey, which shimmered when he moved. Jason wore his characteristic low-hanging trousers, evoking the flair of urban youth. His pants dropped so low that the crotch almost reached his knees, giving him a waddling walk evocative of a distressed penguin. He motioned frantically with his arms, simulating gang signals and adopting positions reminiscent of Madonna or a runway model. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him. He puckered his lips, blowing kisses in all directions and smiling. "Hey, do you feel me?" he exclaimed as he strutted, but his words were lost on everyone. He wasn't saying anything substantial. It struck me as weird that a slim Canadian youngster, too short for hockey, spoke in the manner of inner-city black youth. But I couldn't dispute his incredible talent. "Spare me," Serena grumbled. "You aren't really a fan of Jason Hammaker?" I simply nodded, eliciting a disapproving shake of Serena's head. "Do you know him?" I inquired. She nodded in answer. "He's tried to engage with me several times," she said dismissively. "His people approached me and proposed a romance between us for publicity and profit." I stared at her, my eyes wide. "Did you and him ever get together?" I inquired. "Absolutely not," she snapped. "I am just like any other female. If I ever fall for someone, it will not be Jason Hammaker. It will be a real man." She looked at me and smiled. "Come on," she urged. "Let's give the photographers an opportunity to go on. And then I will introduce you." Suddenly, she became my closest ally. Maybe she wasn't as bad as I assumed. At the least, she was getting me closer to Jason. That was more than I could say for my husband, Serena. "Has Rob ever crossed paths with Jason Hammaker?" I inquired. She replied several times. "If we had merged, I mean the phony romanticism. We could have had Rob take some photographs. Rob even created some pictures for Jason's CD cover." Wait, I misspoke. Rob processed the photographs but did not take them. You must know Rob's feelings about Jason. He's constantly teasing him, even has a nickname for him. "Really?" I exclaimed. "I had no idea. They must be close. And Rob never mentioned it to me." "Rob has a large number of friends in the entertainment industry," she explained. "He's an excellent photographer and his images always show us in a positive light." "So, Rob, what do you call Jason?" I inquired. "It's actually quite endearing," she said. "I wish he had a cute nickname for me, but he only calls me Serena." "So what about Jason?" I pressed. She hesitated. He affectionately refers to him as that little. My eyes widened with surprise. Whether it was due to language barriers or my own confusion, it did not sound affectionate to me. "Let's go and meet them," she urged, taking my hand and guiding me through the crowd. People parted to make way for her, as if they recognized her presence. When we approached Jason, he was mocking the crowd and contorting his face like a teen admiring themselves in the mirror. He accompanied these antics with hand movements and nods, as if dancing to an unknown beat. As Serena approached, he looked up and smiled. Serena still held my hand tightly, and I felt a rush of excitement. As we approached Jason, it felt like all eyes were on us, and my nerves almost made me forget to breathe. "Damn, girl, I knew you couldn't resist coming back to me," he quipped, close up. He appeared much shorter than I had imagined and surprisingly delicate. He had the ear of someone who frequently faced adversity, perhaps even getting bullied, especially in suburban settings among nerdy types. If he ever ventured into the urban areas where his videos were filmed, he'd likely be no match even for elementary school kids. As the crowd dispersed around us, Serena thrust me forward towards Jason. "Here's your biggest fan," she declared. Being propelled in front of him, I couldn't help but feel like one of those scenes at the zoo where the handler tosses a hefty piece of meat to the hungry lions. I wasn't the handler, nor the lion, for that matter. Strangely, I felt like the hunk of meat. The next thing I realized was that Serena had vanished. "So, babe," he addressed, talking to my chest. No, it wasn't rudeness. It was just how towering he was. "Let's focus on you," he continued. "What's your favorite thing about me?" I felt that jolt of electricity again and observed Jason gripping my arm. A couple of photographers snapped pictures of us. "I like to connect with my fans," he remarked. Before I knew it, he had steered me away from the main party room into one of the adjacent chambers. His massive bodyguards trailed us discreetly from a distance. The room we entered was elegant. I recalled Rob mentioning the interview rooms they set up at certain events. They used them when a star had promised an exclusive interview to a reporter or writer. Occasionally, they even brought along a photographer. I soon realized that there were no bodyguards in the room, just Jason and me. After sitting me down on a luxurious sofa, he continued to talk to me. Maintaining close physical intimacy, his hand moved from my arm to my shoulder as he shared his aspirations and difficulties as an artist. Jason expressed a desire to expand the boundaries of his art form, striving to create music that will be honored by many generations, along with musicians such as Bach, Beethoven, and himself, Hammacher. Somewhere in the middle of his speech, I felt that he became more insistent, even though I knew it was inappropriate. I couldn't bring myself to object. After all, it was Jason the hamster. I convinced myself that Rob would understand, and I let Jason take liberties with me. I knew I should have stopped him, but I still didn't think Rob would ever find out about it. He began discussing his latest song, "I Think About You When I'm With Her," and even sang a few words. He simply talked my teeth out. I was dazed. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. I believe I was so taken with Jason that I didn't have the chance to say no. I hadn't even considered saying no. In fact, I hadn't realized I was already close to him. It probably lasted about a minute. Perhaps that is what his new album, Minute Man, should be called. "Damn it, girl!" he exclaimed. It was amazing. It was then that I discovered I'd cheated on my husband. I felt overwhelmed with regret. I didn't consider it at the time since I was so in love with him. I could not image explaining this to Jessica or my children. Damn that. I thought maybe I could get him to do it again. I almost laughed when I realized how little his instrument was. Then I saw he had ruined my little black dress. I suddenly realized I hadn't actually felt anything. His instrument was roughly the size of one of my fingers. On a personal level, this meeting meant absolutely little. The only thing that piqued my curiosity was the fact that Jason Hammacher had just had an intimate encounter with me. "Can I have your phone number, girl?" he asked. His tone of voice was getting on my nerves. He was excessively tall and nasal. "What?" I responded. "Can you provide me your phone number so I can call you? You may be my little pal in Michigan." "What is your name, baby?" he insisted. "Connie Delgado," I responded. As soon as the words left my lips, I realized he wasn't who I had envisioned him to be. Furthermore, I disliked being considered a companion. I figured it was a slang term for a female with easy virtue. "Did you mention Delgado?" he asked while sitting down. When I heard this, my eyes opened in amazement as all traces of his accent appeared to have vanished. "Did you mention Delgado?" he repeated. "Are you related to Robin Delgado, a photographer? I'm his wife," I mumbled. "Shit," he exclaimed. His English was superb. No trace of the ancient street speech remains. He cautioned against discussing it with him. He said, "Damn," he repeated. "Rob is a dear buddy of mine. He photographed the cover of every platinum CD I own. It wouldn't be good to have him angry at me. Some of the concepts he developed for my covers resemble works of art. We have to keep this quiet." "Why would you do this?" he inquired, then banged his head as if comprehending something. That was that tall Russian woman, wasn't it? I knew she did not like me. He claimed that Russian ladies simply dislike black men. "But Jason," I hesitantly remarked, "you are not black." "Whatever." He spit. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone, and pressed the button. 2 big bodyguards. "Open the door." He said, "Get me out of here." The bodyguards exchanged weird looks. "Get me out of here," he said. "We need to get back home before the situation worsens." The big men each grabbed one of his arms and led him from the room, giving me a look as if I were a menace to him. I adjusted my underwear and tried to disguise the stain on my dress. Returning to the boisterous hall of the ongoing party, I began looking for an exit. Serena caught me before I could cross half of the hallway. "How did it go?" she asked. "I am. Nothing occurred," I replied. She grinned knowingly. "You just spilled milk over your outfit, right?" she suggested. "Will you ever?" I started, but she treated me like an idiot. "I am still innocent," she confessed. "I don't want to spend my first time with this jerk when I can be with someone worthy, someone I care about. You're probably racing home so that your manager can call Rob and tell him everything. Right? I assumed. But you don't realize that it won't change anything. Rob and I have an understanding. If his paths had ever crossed with Eva Mendes, he could have had a shot with her, and I could have had a chance with Jason." Hamster. Rob has dated Eva Mendes several times. She admitted that he probably had similar feelings for her as he did for me. "What exactly did he tell you?" I asked. "He admitted that he was married to the most beautiful and amazing woman in the world," she said. He added that the entire show business veneer was a hollow phrase, and he yearned for something genuine with a real woman, and not simply transitory, mentions in newspapers. "My God," I mumbled, "I was such a fool. I believe I need to go home and tell him everything before you arrive." I confessed and tried to get by her, but she was blocking my path. "You don't need to rush out because of me," she assured. "Perhaps you could include a few more celebrities on your list. Besides, I will not be the one to blab. I cannot afford it for a number of reasons." I looked at her as she said, "My manager is Frenchman Friedrich Bontemps. He watched today's test shots and commented, 'I've never looked better.' I want Rob to continue photographing me. Even Friedrich agrees. He brings out something amazing. People often blame the messenger. If I tell Rob about what you did, I might lose a photographer. You do not need to worry about me. I cannot vouch for everyone else or the earlier images of you and Jason. Good luck. You will need it." As she walked away, I looked around the room. The party was in full swing, and it was unlikely that it would end before midnight. It was barely 10. I left and went home. For whatever reason, I ended up there. Perhaps guilt. I began drinking. The Russian woman was to blame for the entire mess. I started the day despising her. She strode onto the set that morning with an attitude of entitlement, as if she were royalty, ignoring the stylists who were impatiently waiting for her. She immediately struck up a discussion with Robert. I assume she confused me for one of Rob's helpers since she ignored me until she asked me to get her coffee. After Rob emphasized my role, she proceeded to disrespect the stylists and designers who sought Rob's approval whenever she changed outfits. Then, toward the end of the shot, she aggressively draped herself over my husband, clearly aware of who I was, but seemingly indifferent. It was like to witnessing a cat in heat. Later on at the party, she introduced me to Jason Hamster. Despite her past experience, with him leaving me feeling completely exposed, I believe she did it on purpose, as if throwing me to the wolves. The vodka seemed to give me a deeper understanding of the Russian psyche. Serena had suggested several reasons why she would not betray me, but she only revealed one: the vodka. Serena had not fooled me, but she had disguised the most important motive. She couldn't confess to Rob. She was afraid of losing Rob, not of losing a photographer. It was blatantly clear. Serena fell in love with my husband. She didn't tell him about me because she assumed he'd reject her. She hoped to profit from my blunder and rescue what was left. It became clear that Rob's claimed ability to draw distinct attributes from Serena was the result of instilling them in her, deliberately or unconsciously. Her eyes sparkled with affection for him. This also explains why she repeatedly flaunted herself in front of him, seeking his approval for the clothing she wore in the photos. As I sipped my drink, my thoughts turned to the day's failures. Throughout my relationship with Rob, I regularly heard him rage about celebrities' spoiled and immature behavior. He often stressed how messed up their attitudes were, how they lacked the sincerity of ordinary people, and frequently appeared to be exaggerated characters rather than genuine humans. This made me think about a variety of things. According to Serena, Rob had met Eva Mendes several times, and she was convinced that Rob had never violated any boundaries with her. What wounded the most was Rob's rejection of Serena. It was stunning to learn that he turned down one of the world's most gorgeous women to express his admiration for me. He adored me while I, without hesitation, betrayed him with Jason Hamburger. Jason abused me, ridiculed me, and fled after learning of my marriage to Rob. He was unconcerned about me since he prioritized his work relationship with Rob. Despite Jason's hollow promises of sincere love and devotion, he showed himself to be disgusting. Rob outperformed him in every aspect. Jessica's observations were accurate. I'm not sure if I ever truly became intoxicated, but I eventually lost consciousness. The sad call from Ed exacerbated an already terrible night. His expectant wife had gone into labor shortly before the event he was covering began. I told him to stay with the group until all of the party guests came, and I promised to join him shortly afterwards with my Mustang to capture memorable moments of the crucial attendees. After thanking me, he rushed to the hospital to see his bride and her parents. Ed, a nice man, faced a position in which, if I were in his place and Connie had gone into labor, I would have departed immediately, telling my colleagues on the scene and accepting whatever repercussions arose. If being present at my child's birth meant jeopardizing my job, I wouldn't want to work for such a company anyway. However, what bothered me the most was the need to divide my focus. Despite the 3-mile geographical distance between the two events, the atmospheres and significance could not have been more different. On one side, there is a collection of larger-than-life figures from the entertainment industry, including actors, models, and musicians, who currently have the public's full attention. On the other hand, there are politicians and influential figures who wield real power, shaping our lives for years to come through the laws and policies they promote. The former personifies youth, energy, and entertainment, while the latter represents experience, wealth, and accountability. As I slid behind the wheel of my deep purple 2012 Mustang GT, I didn't think about the disparity between these two groups. Instead, I was thinking about their shared characteristics. Both factions craved publicity, with appearances in newspapers and magazines. One group sought publicity to increase album sales or box office success, whereas the other sought it to improve their electoral prospects. Finally, as they approached the second hotel, they appeared to be cut from the same cloth. It dawned on me that I had forgotten my photographer's pass to the event. I quickly contacted Polly, who was connected to Ed, and arranged for her to get one from someone already inside. I'd be fine as long as that person didn't leave and have to re-enter. She approached me just outside the entrance, and I chuckled and waved to the security personnel. Knowing the owner of the security company, I could have probably avoided the need for a pass entirely. When I saw Serena emerge from her limousine and make her way indoors, I quickly slipped behind a corner. Serena had developed feelings for me for no apparent reason, but I was careful not to encourage her advances. Despite her undeniable beauty and pleasant demeanor, I remained aware of my marital status. Furthermore, Serena had already caused me enough problems earlier in the day. Once I returned to the room designated for storing our equipment, after greeting my team and getting updates on their tasks. I praised Ed for his meticulous planning and directed them to continue their work. However, I had a different idea. While the majority of the shots they would take would be staged and conventional, similar to those taken by other photographers, I wanted to go out and secretly capture candid moments, I wanted to immortalize the stars in unguarded moments. I'm fully aware that many of these shots may not meet expectations, but I'm hoping that a few will be pure gold. After about 20 minutes of circling the room, I spotted Jason Hamaker with a petite woman in a black dress. Her legs were solid and well-shaped, which evoked a sense of familiarity in me. However, despite my numerous photographed encounters with various women, this detail slipped my mind. I moved around for a better vantage point and almost fumbled my camera when I noticed Jason conversing with my wife Connie. Her presence took me off guard. I couldn't understand how she got here or gained access. Nevertheless, I resolved to discover the truth. Initially, I entertained the idea of confronting them both, demanding an explanation from Connie. But on second thought, I restrained myself, convinced that her motivation was simply to meet her idol, Jason. I had postponed introducing them so that Connie could maintain her idealized image of him. Often, the reality of meeting our idols proves disappointing. As a result, I decided to continue photographing their interaction in order to provide Connie with mementos of her encounter with the jerk. Then he took her from the hallway to one of the interview rooms. My heart clenched in my chest. I ran out of the building and around it, realizing that the ballroom was not exactly on the same level with the ground. I returned to the building. I went up to the second-floor balcony and pointed the telephoto lens at the rooms on the other side of the building. Several rooms were vacant. Then I found them. I started taking photographs. Jason put his hand on Connie, and I was furious. She let him go on. I don't know how I did it, but somehow I switched the camera to automatic mode. The camera kept shooting at 1-second intervals, taking picture after picture, and my heart was tearing apart. Despite my previous belief that life looks better through a camera lens, what I witnessed back then couldn't have improved even the best lens I have. I couldn't mistake what unfolded before me. Standing on that balcony, I witnessed the demise of my marriage. What infuriated me most was the hypocrisy from Connie earlier that morning about a hug from Serena. When Serena hugged me, she clung to me because I didn't reciprocate. Yet now my supposedly devoted wife was allowing that phony, insincere, good-for-nothing guy to be intimate with her. I was aware that outside the room, Marco and Will Jason's imposing bodyguards would be stationed. There was no chance of getting past those two ex-football players. Besides, causing a scene at the party was out of the question. It would spell instant disaster for my career. Most promoters and even the celebrities themselves preferred to avoid unnecessary drama unless they craved publicity. For someone whose role was to remain invisible, merely capturing moments through photographs causing a scene would be unacceptable. The optimal course of action would be to walk away and devise a plan for seeking revenge on both of them discreetly. I snapped a few final pictures focusing on Connie's expression before departing. Upon returning to the main hall, I addressed my team, praising their work and scheduling a meeting at the office for 2 a.m. to review the shots. By 4 a.m., we would have examined all the photos from both events and sent them to the magazine that commissioned us. Additionally, we plan to offer some shots to newspapers lacking their own coverage or missing our unique angles. With 4 hours to spare, I set out of the building and into my Mustang, finding solace in the engine's roar. Arriving home, I packed enough clothes for a few days before hitting the road again. I drove downtown to the office building where I leased space. The entire third floor, which housed offices, photography studios, conference rooms, storage areas, and editing suites. We utilized every inch of it. I was aware that in a few years we would likely require our own building. One perk was that during my carefree bachelor days, I often stayed in the small adjoining room behind my office. It had a cozy couch, a full bathroom with a shower, and even a compact kitchenette until I found a new apartment or condo. It served its purpose. Connie and I had only been married for 2 years. Upon our marriage, my business lawyer suggested we sign an agreement that would safeguard my business assets in the event of a divorce. While not exactly a prenuptial agreement, it served its purpose. Additionally, given our brief marriage and lack of children, any divorce proceedings would likely be straightforward. I envisioned it as a simple division of assets. This didn't work out. You take your belongings, I'll take mine. Whoever wants to keep, the condo can take over the payments. It was nice knowing you. Goodbye. The security officer stationed at the building entrance greeted me with a wave as I maneuvered my Mustang into my designated parking space. My spot was strategically located near the front of the building, close to where the owners parked whenever they were in town. Securing this prime spot was a perk of renting the entire third floor, making me one of their largest tenants. Greg, the guard on duty, was accustomed to our unconventional hours. Given that the media industry operated around the clock, we were in and out almost 24/7. With the advent of the internet, we could monetize photos at any time of day as there was always daylight somewhere in the world. As I stepped out of the elevator, my small team of night staff glanced up. Elsa, my office manager, appearing as though she had just woken up, approached me with a steaming cup of coffee. "I didn't expect you until 2, she remarked. "I didn't expect to be here," I responded. "I'll be in my office for a while. I don't want any interruptions. I have to edit and print some photos I never anticipated taking." She sensed my distress. "Do you need anything?" she inquired. "Perhaps more of this coffee?" "Occasionally," I said. "Elsa, what's the largest high-quality photo paper we have in stock for printing? I believe we still have some 18 by 24 glossy cardstock left." She answered. "Excellent. Bring me some of that," I instructed. "How many sheets?" she asked. "As many as you can locate," I said. "I require at least 10. But 20 would be preferable if we don't have that many. Then bring me all we have and then move to the next larger size." I was working alone in my office. I transferred the compromising photos of Connie to my computer, carefully selecting the most damning ones. In the last picture, they were captured during an illegal act. After taking the last sip of coffee, I sent all the pictures to the main printer, since my office printer could not cope with such large prints. I went to the printer in the main office area and waited for the photos to print. I deliberately printed them in reverse order, so the most incriminating ones would be on the larger paper, just in case we ran out. After they finished printing, I left the office with them. It took nearly 2 hours to process, select, edit, and print the pictures. I told Elsa I'd return to help go through the evening shots. Driving back to the condo, I couldn't shake off the numbness. It wasn't so much pain as a cold detachment. Buying a new car would have felt more stressful than contemplating the end of my marriage. I hadn't expected to find Connie in our bedroom, hoping she'd be asleep. She wasn't there, and though unconscious, it was clear she wasn't actually asleep. She seemed to be passed out drunk, holding on to the nearly empty bottle of vodka. Various questions raced through my mind. Was she intoxicated when she entered the room with Jason, or was she drinking to alleviate her guilt? Either way, it didn't concern me much. I left her where she was and proceeded to enact my plan. I retrieved a roll of duct tape and began affixing squares of it to the walls of our bedroom and down the hallway leading to the bathroom. Once all the tape was in place, I took out a jar of safety pins and pinned one to each square of duct tape. Following that, I returned and threaded pieces of fishing line through the safety pins. The result was a sparse, yet intricate network of clear plastic lines resembling a spider's that spanned the entire condo. I returned to the living room and fetched Connie, lifting her gently. I carried her to our bedroom and tucked her in. Next, I arranged all the printed pictures in order on fishing lines. Positioned directly above the bed was the photo of her meeting her hero, Jason Hamaker, placed at eye level so it would catch her attention upon waking as she moved through the house. She'd encounter each picture until reaching the bathroom where the final one awaited, using a thick white paint marker. I had written a clear, single-word message on it for her, ensuring she'd grasp it even in her hungover state. The next morning, as I traversed the condo, switching off lights, I scanned for anything else I might want to take with me come morning. My first task would be to contact and initiate the divorce proceedings. When I woke up the next afternoon, I felt completely disoriented. Instead of the sun shining through my window as it should have been, I noticed it beaming down onto the bed beside me. Yet somehow, not directly on me, realizing I was in bed was odd. I shouldn't have been. The last memory I had was sitting on the floor in front of the couch drinking. How had I ended up in bed? Rob must have put me there when he came home this morning. Then I realized Rob wasn't there, which didn't make sense. Rob, like most people, had patterns. After working a night event, he'd spend the night editing and selling pictures. Then we'd sleep in. Not only was Rob not in bed with me, but his side looked untouched. He probably came home, found me on the floor, put me to bed, and went back to work. Despite my fuzzy splitting headache, I smiled. Jason would never have done something like that. What had drawn me to him? I couldn't say. He was nothing like his music or videos. Rob was right. He wasn't a real person. As I fully opened my eyes to rise from bed, my gaze fixated on the picture hanging above, processing its content. I pondered how it ended up there and who placed it. The image depicted me in my now ruined black dress, standing with Jason from the previous evening. I'd never seen myself in that dress before. Had I known it was so tight and suggestive, I wouldn't have worn it. I hurriedly took down the picture only to discover another behind it, showing Jason with his hand on my shoulder, moving away. As I stood, I noticed my balance was still off and hangover considerably worse than imagined. Nearly banging my head on the wall, I stumbled. I looked up and realized that the second artwork was followed by another, and then another, getting to my feet with difficulty. I began to round the room, analyzing each image, each of which was more unsettling than the preceding one. As I proceeded through this series of photographs towards the corridor, I observed a change in perspective and viewpoint. Since it was impossible for the photographer to take images via the locked door, it looked likely that either the second photographer or the same one proceeded to take pictures outside the room in the middle of the hallway. My gaze was grabbed by multiple images of Jason and me seated on a beautiful sofa in the interrogation room. My heart fell when I learned the scenario. The only unresolved issue was amount of the images and the depth of Robin's fury towards me. By that time, it became evident to me that Rob had discreetly taken these images himself, despite the fact that he was not expected at the party. By the time I got to the bathroom, I grasped the depth of his knowledge about me. With the last photo, immediately during the betrayal, it was scribbled with a white marker in the corner. Goodbye. The shock of receiving that news forced me to vomit once more. What on earth did he mean when he said goodbye? I sprayed water on my face to recover control despite my splitting headache. I grabbed a few aspirin and vigorously brushed my teeth to get rid of the taste of both booze and vomit. I dialed Rob's cell phone number, but it rang unanswered. After the 10th ring, I received a message alerting me that the number had been changed and no additional information was available. It dawned on me that Rob was serious. He did not share his personal phone number with many individuals. I remembered chuckling in the past when I realized my contact list was 3 times longer than Rob's. While Rob had many clients, the majority merely knew his office number. Only a few people knew his personal number, which numbered less than 10. He preferred that clients and colleagues contact him through his office, where they were directed to his personal line. That list included me and our home phone number, Rob's mother, father, sister, co-workers, and a few close friends. Ron most likely called the telephone company to change the number. Then he contacted his few contacts to update them on the latest information. He most likely completed the assignment quickly. When I called the office and asked to speak with Rob, I was transferred to the receptionist. She questioned as to the objective of my call. Thankfully, one of Rob's office supervisors knew my voice, so I was in luck. I simply said it was a personal concern. After requesting my name and phone number, the receptionist told me that someone will contact me back. Before we ended the conversation, I asked to speak with Elsa. I was advised that Elsa had worked the night before, but I could speak with Susan instead. Sue had always been friendly with me, so I consented. The call was transferred. When Susan answered, I identified myself, and there was a delay before she asked why I was calling. I told her I wanted to chat to Rob and that I'd be down there soon anyway. "Listen, Connie," she started, "I understand there might be something going on between you and Rob right now. As a married woman myself, I understand that partnerships may have ups and downs. I don't know the specifics of your issue, and I'm not taking sides here. My task is to follow Rob's instructions. I've been told not to connect you with him under any circumstances. He has made it apparent that he does not wish to speak with you. In fact, he has taken steps to limit your access to the 3rd story of the building. Security has been instructed to prevent you from leaving the elevator on that floor. While he does not have complete authority over the building, he gets along well with the owners, even if you were able to enter the building. Rob is not here right now. They were all working late on images of yesterday night's events. Rob got a couple hours of sleep and left when I arrived this morning. I know he had a meeting about the images he took of Serena and the other girls yesterday. He could have had other meetings booked, possibly with Jeff. I hope everything works out for you, Connie. Take care. I realized then that the situation was serious. Rob's attorney, Jeff Goldblum, was in charge of preparing the prenuptial agreement I signed. Although it was not a traditional prenup defining asset division in the event of divorce, it stated unequivocally that Rob had exclusive ownership of his business created before to our marriage. In the event of a divorce, I would have no claim to his business, but I could still access a share of his pay and personal assets. Given Jeff's competence in business law rather than divorce law, Rob contacting him could have a variety of consequences. Overwhelmed with emotion, I called Jessica, who arrived quickly. Instead of offering sympathy, she hounded me with questions about Jason Hammaker. Have you met him? What was he like? Do you have his autograph or any pictures? She shot away, not pausing for air. Damn, you look terrible, she said. So what went wrong? Clearly not meeting him. You were left feeling sad. What is the story? Could you please give me a moment to speak? I snapped, and she complied. I did attend the party, I began, and Serena Vescovo was present. She introduced me to waiting. Jessica exclaimed, taken off guard, Have you ever met Serena Vescovo? Are you close pals or something? No, I responded, but she isn't as bad as I initially assumed. Anyway, she introduced me to Jason. And... Really? Jessica spoke forward happily. Is he? No. I abruptly interrupted. He does not resemble someone you would see on television or in a video. First and foremost, he stands only approximately 4 feet and 11 inches tall. In reality, he is a troll. He has a false accent. Everything about him is phony and he is not gifted. Wow, Jessica replied, taken aback. You are not. Please tell me you didn't do what I assumed you were doing. I nodded. Tears welled in my eyes. No surprise you're upset? Do you feel guilty? She asked. Connie is your best buddy. Please listen to me. I believe we have all heard that honesty is the best policy. To hell with it all, this is absolute bullshit. If Rob ever brings this up with you, deny it completely. I grabbed her by the shoulder and led her out into the hallway. What's happening? She inquired, perplexed as she examined the photographs. Shock was mirrored on her face. She stressed that Rob should not view these images. She strolled down the hallway, looking at the images and removing them from the walls. When she entered the restroom and discovered the most scary ones, she turned to face me. Were you not kidding? She said. You slept with Jason Hammaker. What was it like? It was absolutely nothing. I responded when he discovered that I was Rob's wife. He appeared more concerned about Rob not taking pictures of him than with my sentiments. He isn't as smart as he claims to be, and his accent is phony. He's a total jerk. Then you must ensure that Rob is unaware of the situation, she advised Jessica. I said softly. Yes, she smiled. Rob took the damn pictures, I shouted. What exactly did he mean when he said goodbye in the last picture? I have not been able to contact him since I awoke. He changed his phone number, and his office staff won't let me speak with him. How about your agreement? She asked. What are you talking about, Jessica? I asked. You mentioned that you both reached an accord. He may be with Ava Mendez while you could be with Jason Hammaker. Rob keeps his commitments. You only need to remind him of it. How can I remind him of something if he doesn't want to speak with me? I asked. She suggested that he find someone he communicates with and ask them to remind him. It wasn't an outright crazy idea. I didn't have any better ideas, however. I only needed to find the proper individual for the job. Jessica and I spent the rest of the day discussing what steps I should take. I was grateful for her attendance because I was feeling bad, and having someone to share my sorrow with reduced the burden by half. Meanwhile, Rob didn't spend any time. The very next morning, I received a call from a lawyer wanting a meeting to discuss my divorce. He asked for my attorney's contact information, insisting on legal representation during our meeting. He discussed the option of providing me copies of the documentation to review while I sought legal representation. Given the simplicity of the divorce, he recommended that with legal assistance we could complete the procedure and file within a week. He even said that with the appropriate judge, the entire case could be concluded in 3 months. After his proposal, he waited for my response. Where is your office located? I inquired. He gave me an address and informed me that he was available throughout the day. I quickly prepared and arrived at his workplace, dressed casually in jeans and a blouse, and wearing Rob's favorite leather jacket. When I arrived, I was led into his office, where he stood to greet me. His glance scanned the room, as if expecting someone else to join me while he extended his hand for a handshake. I recoiled and administered a hard slap across his face. He complained. "That is assault." "No, it was not," I countered. "That was therapeutic." In any medical journal, the suggested treatment for people in shock or acting strangely is a harsh, stinging slap on the face. It helps to restructure their thinking and restart their information processing. He looked at me with incredulity, still nursing his smacked cheek. "But I'm not crazy," he added warily. "If you think me to quietly stand back and let Rob go, you're mistaken," I replied. "Rob is mine. I love him. Just because I committed a mistake does not mean my marriage has ended. Furthermore, Rob has no grounds for divorce. We reached a deal." "What agreement?" he inquired. "Let Rob call me and we'll talk about it." I responded. "Okay, while you're here, can we at least discuss a settlement?" "There will not be a settlement," I stated unequivocally. "Thus, there is no need to discuss it." He indicated that it would be pointless for me to urge Rob to contact you. He added that Rob had given me his legal authority and told me to handle the divorce. He is currently working on his career. Actually, he's about to leave town for business. Rob is heavily involved in a major project that one of his clients has acquired. It could be his most major opportunity yet, but due to the substantial effort required, he may be away for quite some time. He also needs to find a new home to reside, depending on your decision on the unit you both presently rent. Jeff believes it's time for Rob to buy a house, either alone or with you, thus leaving the condo may be beneficial to him. Perhaps he could be persuaded to cover the remaining lease balance in exchange for a rapid conclusion. I said, "I am not interested. You will not be involved after Rob and I have discussed this. You may be interested in some subjects." He began, but I fled before he had finished. After more consideration, I realized I should have followed his advice when I stopped at the grocery store on my way home to pick up a few items for dinner. When I called the bank from my car, I was shocked to hear that all of my cards had been denied. I discovered that Rob had paid off and canceled all of the cards in my name that were linked to his accounts, effectively his credit cards. I went immediately to the bank, intending to draw a check from our joint account and live on cash until Rob came to his senses. However, I saw that all of our accounts were actually in Rob's name, since he had deleted mine with only $100 in cash. I knew it would not last long. Back at home, I looked in the phone book for a lawyer. The first one I contacted agreed to take my case on a contingency basis, meaning that if we divorced, his fees would be deducted from my payout if we remained married. Rob would pay the bill. We scheduled a meeting with Rob's lawyer, who turned out to be very hostile. Despite originally claiming availability all day, he rescheduled our appointment for next week and swiftly sent divorce papers to my lawyer. My lawyer looked at me and started shaking his head. "If this continues, you'll have to find work to cover my expenses," he said. "What do you mean?" I inquired. "He mentioned that you had only recently married and have no children. Most judges will not award much in this scenario. Your husband isn't seeking a no-fault divorce. He uses supposed photographic proof to support his claim of adultery. Furthermore, he claims you signed an agreement waiving all interest in his company. He reinvests profits in the company while paying himself a modest income. You will not get much, if anything. In fact, the amount he cleared from your credit cards this morning exceeds what you might expect from a settlement. You seem to enjoy shopping quite a bit." "What's the point?" I pressed. "If this divorce continues, you may owe your husband money," he cautioned. "And given your financial situation, you must seek employment immediately. Consider this settlement offer. It includes $25,000 and permits you to maintain the unit till your lease expires." "What are your rates?" I inquired. $200 per hour. You already owe me almost $1,000. He smirked. "If you signed today, you'd be left with $24,000. I am not in a haste. We can litigate this until the end." "Do I have a solid case?" I inquired. "Does he have the photographs?" He replied. I nodded, and a tear welled up in my eye. "If you went out and cheated with someone else, why are you attempting to save this relationship?" He probed. "Why not let go and follow the other person, because this is the one I love," I responded. The other person is a jerk and he's famous." He shrugged and gave a sardonic smile. "If I sign the forms, can I still try to reconcile with or win back my husband?" I inquired. "Absolutely," he affirmed. "You can try to reconcile until you die, and stranger things will happen. I signed the documents over the next few weeks. My life is spiraling south. I discovered that the judge had issued a ruling on our divorce, which would be finalized in 6 months." Rob never returned to the condominium. Instead, one of his assistants arrived to retrieve his remaining stuff, which comprised entirely of clothing and personal items. When I questioned about the rest of his belongings, hoping to fight ownership of some items and force Rob's personal retrieval, the assistant casually responded that he would buy replacements. Consequently, the situation worsened. I started witnessing small news bits and visuals on television showcasing Rob and Serena. Serena had been chosen for both the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition and the Victoria's Secret catalog, with Rob as the photographer in both cases. Their repeated appearances together appeared more than coincidental. Serena's interest in my husband had long been suspected, and it now appeared that she was claiming him. Meanwhile, Rob's business thrived. He turned down an opportunity to photograph the cover of the upcoming Jason Hamaker CD owing to scheduling issues, prompting Jason to object vehemently despite the option of outsourcing the assignment to his staff and appearing only for the shoot. Rob was adamant in his decision. Speculation grew as to why Rob was turning down attractive projects that his team could easily handle. But I felt Rob and Jason were aware of the reasons. However, none of us accepted the fact. A few weeks later, I realized that I was pregnant. I insisted on meeting with Rob through my attorney. I arranged for a court to postpone the divorce until after the baby was born. The meeting did not go as I had hoped. Instead of simply robbing his lawyer and myself, there were 5 of us there. I had imagined a private conversation between us in which I could express my regret for what had happened, reaffirm my love for him, and consider the prospect of reconciling for the sake of our child. However, that is not how things turned out. My lawyer began by claiming that Rob would have to pay child support in addition to our previous agreement. Furthermore, she claimed that the support should be based on Rob's actual financial capabilities rather than his self-reported earnings. Rob immediately questioned the baby's paternity, and Serena softly stated that if the child was his, they planned to raise it together. This revelation stunned me since it made it plain that they were a couple, and my kid would not change that in Serena's eyes. My attorney informed them that in our state, any children born from a marriage were legally deemed offspring, regardless of biological paternity. Rob's attorney contended that once the baby was born, a DNA test may demonstrate non-paternity, allowing the divorce to proceed. This would involve negotiating child support from the original father, with Rob exempt. However, my attorney objected by referencing modern prenatal DNA tests that may establish paternity without endangering the child. If we could establish the child was Rob's before birth, he would be liable for prenatal support. I organized with my doctor for the test and am awaiting the findings. However, we were told that we had to wait another month for the test. During this time, my attorney emphasized the significance of contacting other potential fathers. I wasn't sure how to reach Jason, but Serena helped by giving me his management company's phone number. They weren't excited about my call. Serena also gave me Jason's private phone number, which I wasn't sure still worked, but I decided to try. When Jason answered the phone, I recognized his voice. "Yeah. Who is this?" he asked. "Jason, this is Connie," I responded. "Do you remember me?" He did not recognize me at first. When I reminded him, he became agitated, blaming me for his problems with Rob and criticizing me for the quality of his new CD cover. However, when I informed him that I was pregnant, he responded enthusiastically. "If you and Rob can reconcile, maybe he'll shoot my dang cover," he said. "Jason, I'm phoning because there's a chance it's not Rob's baby," I explained. However, before I could finish, the phone was disconnected. I tried phoning again several times that day, but by the 8th attempt, I discovered that the number had changed. Unable to reach him, I phoned his management, but was never connected. However, the next weeks were quite unremarkable. I spent a significant portion of the money Rob had given me to prepare for the baby. The day of the paternity test finally arrived, and to my surprise, Rob accompanied me to the doctor's office while I waited for the doctor. We had an opportunity to talk. I felt quite anxious. Rob walked over and squeezed my hand. "I've always wanted us to have children." He mentioned Rob. "This is not how things were supposed to go." I responded, "You and I should still be together. We simply need to make the most of the situation." He told Rob that it was a mistake. "Jason Hammaker is terrible." I insisted, "I understand." He nodded. "That is why I have kept you away from him. I'll admit that I was a little jealous." "What had you got to be jealous of?" I questioned. He confessed, "I loved you deeply. And Jason was somewhat of a fantasy for you. Remember our ridiculous pact?" He chuckled. "Yeah, you broke it," I murmured, tears flowing down my cheeks. "Connie, it was never serious," he explained. "When we married, we swore not to betray each other. Whether it was Jason or Eva Mendes, it was always intended to be just us." "Did you ever meet Eva Mendes?" I asked. "Never," he grinned. "Why should I? I had you waiting for me at home." Hearing him say he preferred me over his ideal fantasy woman, I was left feeling miserable. Soon later, the doctor entered the room. When I emerged about an hour later, he waited by my side while the doctor wrote a prescription for the mild pain I'd be experiencing in the coming days. "Connie, if it is our baby, we will need to communicate and make plans," he explained. "As a father, I intend to be actively involved. But if it turns out to be Jason's, I wish you a good life." My heart sank at that moment because I realized that if the baby belonged to Jason, I would lose my spouse forever. I also knew Jason would not be a responsible father, and I would encounter significant challenges in obtaining child support from him among his circle of admirers. The doctor had said it would take 3 days to get the test results. During those 3 days, I was anxious. I experienced several daydreams and nightmares. I dreamed that the baby was Rob's and we reunited, living happily ever after. In contrast, I dreamt that the kid was Rob's, and Serena paid a large money to have me gone. I awoke in a panic after dreaming that a Russian man was about to strike me with an axe. On the 3rd morning, I awoke to my phone ringing. It was Jessica. "I called to tell you about the news." She said, "Jesse, I'll call you back in a moment." I replied that I needed to contact the doctor and receive my results. "But Connie, you should hear this," she urged as I closed the conversation. Jessica would sometimes put my patience to the test. I questioned what she thought was more essential than hearing the results of my baby's DNA test. After what seemed like an eternity, I was finally able to reach the doctor by phone. "We've done the tests several times," she told me, "and there is no doubt, I hope, you can find happiness." My heart skipped a beat and a smile sprang on my face. I was positive Rob would not let Serena approach his children, let alone hurt them. And I trusted his promise to being an active father, so I could use that to drive Serena out of the picture. The doctor pointed out that the man who accompanied you to the office couldn't possibly be the baby's father. I let the phone drop from my grasp as tears welled up. This was not how things were meant to go. After sobbing for what seemed like an age, I recovered myself and decided I needed to contact my lawyer. Jason possessed money. Maybe I didn't love him, but he was legally obligated to support me and our child. I concluded the phone and started planning how to break the news to him. Almost quickly, the phone rang again, and I answered. Jessica demanded. "What's up with you?" she said. "Have you watched it yet?" "Have you seen what?" I inquired. "Turn on the television," she said. I shuffled over to the television and turned it on. There, Jason. Hamburger's face dominated the screen. No, I thought his new CD was coming out today. The globe would undoubtedly fall to Hamburger Frenzy. Breaking entertainment news, the announcer. Canadian music icons, including rapper Jason Hamburger, noted for his urban style, were killed Friday night. Hamburger was filming one of his gangster rap-inspired videos in the Detroit projects when he wandered from the set during a break to converse with locals who were offended by his clothes and language. Hammaker and his bodyguards were viciously assaulted. I was stunned. I quickly changed the channel. "The world mourns the loss of Jason Hamburger," said the announcer on another channel. I heard a different perspective. The culprit, who faces a life sentence, was interviewed as police apprehended him, according to the announcer. The scene showed a black man with long dreadlocks being led away in handcuffs by the cops. A reporter pointed a microphone at him and started questioning him. Remorse? Hell no, I feel no remorse. How would I know who he was? The reporter stated that he arrived with 2 massive bodyguards and strutted around like Queen Elizabeth. He was a native of the area, having grown up there. This is reflected in each of his songs. "Come on, you are delusional." The man objected. "He wasn't one of us, just a crazy white man mocking our culture. That is why I took care of him." The reporter's voice trembled as he said his name. "Jason Hamster. Really, I shot him." The man had a sudden realization. But if I'd known who he was, I would have behaved differently. "I'm feeling bad right now. I would have used my shotgun." "Have you listened to his music?" This is where the announcer gets interrupted. The hamster left almost nothing for his family, spending the majority of his money on clothing and accumulating debts. The sheriff will auction off his belongings to cover funeral costs. That's when I realized I was in big trouble. I was cleaning the tables in the diner where I worked. It was tough to wipe the damn table because the towel I had was completely dry. It was during rush hour, and I needed the table for a couple of guys who had just arrived. I was exhausted from standing all day, and the opportunity for some overtime would really boost my income. Most of what I earned went towards daycare for my baby and food for both of us. I had downsized to a smaller place that I could afford and was working on rebuilding my life. I hadn't been keeping up with entertainment news because I was still recovering from my divorce with Rob. It had been a year, and I hadn't heard anything about him. Deep down, I secretly hoped that he would grow tired of, or vice versa, and come looking for me. Someone had switched on the TV, and I glanced up when I heard the collective sigh from the patrons in the diner. "Damn woman is stunning!" shouted one of the guys from the back. I couldn't bring myself to reveal that my husband had once rejected her for me. Perhaps it was vanity, but knowing that Rob had chosen me over her made me content. I tuned into the announcer's voice. Victoria's Secret model and Sports Illustrated cover girl Serena Vescovo announced her retirement today. The 24-year-old model is expecting a child and preparing to wed her fiancé, renowned photographer Robin Delgado. Vescovo told reporters she wouldn't miss her former life. All she ever desired was to be a wife and mother. Delgado added that Serena was his dream woman and they would grow old together with their children being happy and healthy. Returning to wiping the table, suddenly, the damp rag wasn't an issue. The tears down my face served the purpose just fine. It had become an agreed normal between us a couple of weeks after D-Day that we can go through each other's phones and other accounts when we want. I normally don't because it's just adding to the pain I already put myself in. He had let me know he was uninterested in fidelity after he discovered I threw it out, and I had enough to suspect he had something going on with other betrayed spouse for a short while. At some point, though, it seems a common friend of ours decided to play matchmaker between him and a much younger woman from her family who had a very obvious crush on him and saw it fit to live an adventure. Now that he was willing and at liberty to, I don't know details about how they lived their adventure, but I know she was his go-to place in his romantic interest. And now I've seen him texted her about his decision to end our marriage. He tells her about how difficult it was for him to decide to split our daughter's life into 2 homes. He tells her that she helped feel better about himself, and with it think with more clarity, but that she played no role in his decision to divorce. He explains in length that she accepted him as an attached man who was unsure what his immediate future would be and could go back to his wife for a carefree episode of their lives, and that things would be changing now that he was severing his attaché. And he was willing to become a proper boyfriend to her, the one who has a daughter not even 10 years younger. He went through incredible lengths trying to make her feel safe and blameless, telling her about his decision first over me, his wife and mother of his daughter. If I needed more of a reminder about how my affair broke everything, this one was perfect. When he got back home, I asked him. There is a lot to discuss about the divorce and separation themselves, but we talked about how reconciliation failed. He said he was not satisfied with my attitude and he was bearing his pain alone while I inflicted it on him and not feeling it. But he said at the end of the day, what I could have done was stay faithful. And that was really my only one chance all along. He didn't know entirely the details back then, but he found out his emotions make him someone who can't reconcile. I now have to accept that he won't be my husband, my partner, my rock through this life. I was supposed to prepare for it 4 months, and I'm still not getting it right now. I'm still stuck with any idea of meeting another man. Reminds me of my affair and makes me want to throw up when I don't actually throw up. maybe it's not that bad. Apparently, I have not found my way to become a safe partner again, one who could enter a man's life and make it a fulfilling marriage. He won't need to fear being cheated on. My age is handsome and enters a life period with a dating pool full of interesting women bound to be to his tastes. He already has one lined up, though I think she is too young. They could have a nice relationship until they move on, and maybe he'll find a next partner in life who will know to treasure her chance to be for life with him. Anyway, it looks like he will be moving on and doing good, which at the end of the day was maybe the most important to me, considering our daughter was never in danger. I did the worst I could, and my consequences are right there now. I remember talking about it here. Didn't erase what I do, but at least lifted some of my confusion and tendency to feel bad for myself with more relevant feelings. Edit. There is another milestone I dread before everything left is working on myself and co-parenting our daughter. When we're going to tell our families that we're divorcing, they'll be disappointed to no end extra hard because of how much they helped us when we had our daughter too young. We will have to tell why. And I don't know how I'm going to face my parents now. Edit 2 affair was kept semi-secret. The other betrayed spouse was informed, and who knows who got to know after that. A few carefully chosen friends of ours were told because there was a need to explain our completely newfound awkwardness and new behavior after D-Day. That's how a friend of ours decided it was time for her cousin to go bed my husband if she wanted him so much. I'm not completely following with the idea here, to be honest. The limited exposure was mostly from his idea, from what I gathered since he agreed to take time before making a decision and to get fair consideration to reconciliation. He had to do it honestly, which meant he didn't know that he wouldn't get back with me. And in the event that he does, our family's knowing would make it too difficult to live through, or at least that would need to be decided in due time. AP. Some individuals will never overcome a partner's infidelity once the trust is broken, once they can never regard their spouse the same and it's their right to do so. Continue focusing on personal growth, attending counseling sessions, and striving to become someone trustworthy and proud of if and when you get back into the dating pool. Be warned that most men would find your past infidelity a turnoff, and that again as the consequences of your own actions. Consequences of infidelity are always so tragic. Keep exploring the underlying reasons for your actions to prevent a recurrence. Ultimately, strive to forgive yourself as part of your journey towards healing and self-improvement. Comments. I hope you take this as a learning opportunity to work on yourself. It's all you can do and would be a very mature and positive step. Thanks for sharing your story, as I feel it is likely very common, but most WC hide in shame when their story ends up this way. You have no need to continue to punish yourself. Just seek out therapy to help you deal with regret and to help you maintain a civil co-parenting relationship. As you well know, these are the most likely consequences of an affair, but you can pick yourself up and try to do better in the future. You need to work on yourself. Not just move on, but look back. Try to figure out why you had the affair. Don't dismiss it as it was a terrible mistake. I don't know why I did it kind of thing. That means you are unaware of where you are weak, so you are untrustworthy even to yourself. You need to examine how and where you slipped in the first place, why you didn't stop, how you justified continuing in the moment, and why that worked. What motivated you to push aside your commitment, etc. It's never a single decision, a single misstep. It's a series that could have been stopped at any point if you'd wanted it to stop. So if you haven't, you need a therapist who can help you talk about the affair, your marriage, and your likely upcoming divorce story too. Hey, I am new here, however. D-Day is back in July of 2016. Yes, almost 7 years ago. I know I might receive some hate comments and hopefully some favorable ones too. It's okay though. I am here for help. I am the one that cheated on my hubby. It lasted for 4 months, and I trickled truth to him after as well. It was emotional at first for the first 2 months, and then escalated to physical. There was Neil interaction around a week after D-Day, but I did wave to him at a stoplight when my car drew up next to his about a month later or so. There has been zero cheating. We had been to quite a bit of counseling right after, did an affair recovery group for a very long period. Few years, actually, which involved weekly calls. We ended up selling our house, moving cities, selling cars because we had sex in them, and transferring our 4 beautiful kids, now 18, 15, 12, and 7, to new schools. We mutually chose to build a house which we are now living in. We have read a lot of novels as well. We are now back in counseling again with a counselor I love, but individual counseling right now, not a couple. I've had a lot of family of origin concerns to cope with. However, that is hardly an explanation for my behavior. I accept full responsibility for my conduct. I assume full responsibility. My husband is not at fault for what I did. It is I've got nothing to defend. I was a terrible person. Mom, wife, friend, and all of my behaviors were unloving and cruel to those of you who are here and have been cheated on. I'm very sorry. It's not fair to you. And you were thrown into this without your knowledge or consent. Nobody should have to go through the suffering you're experiencing. It's dreadful. A bit more background. My oldest understands that we had to explain why we had to relocate because she was upset to be moving at the start of her junior year. We relocated to a different city 50 minutes away. We've been in our new house for 1.5 years. My hubby has always struggled with negative triggers. He requested all of the specifics, so I sent them to him. He is still dealing with his marriage to a cheater. He is unable to be his true self and believes he is the deal-breaker type of guy. He fantasizes about being with someone who is clean and untainted, but he still harbors hatred and anger. He has not forgiven me. I asked him, and some of his top basic values are justice, fairness, and love. He created a post on his own with a lawyer in the fall of 2022. It took me a few months to sign, but I did it. I had been a stay-at-home parent for the previous 16 years, so there was some concern about the financial position and the possibility that he would simply turn around and divorce me. He stated that he was not considering divorce at the time of signing and that it would provide him with some sense of justice. I signed it 4 months ago in the hopes of making him feel better and safer. I am by no means the unicorn recovery wife. I am trying and do not want to give up. I've had to cope with shame issues and control methods. I struggle with empathy with him at times. So our conversations about affairs continue in a loop. I have grown and continue to learn and change. I truly want to be the greatest person I can be. I want to be the greatest wife I can for him, and I'm appreciative for everything he's done for us. I am so sorry and feel terrible for him. He claims he still loves me but does not want me. He still enjoys having sex with me, but there are still triggers. He has said I am a terrific catch and that our relationship is better than others that do not include an affair. We still have a great time together. He just feels he'd be happier divorced from someone who didn't cheat on him and separated so he can heal more. He stated that if we divorced, maybe we'd get back together in a few years. And perhaps not. He sometimes feels as if he's faking it with me. We will be married for 21 years in August. I'm not even sure what I'm looking for. Perhaps advice, opinions, what I should do more of, or someone with a similarity. I really love him. I want my family to remain united. I realize I should not have done what I did. It was totally wrong. Sorry, this is quite long. You must show more empathy, Opie, or you will lose him. He's attempting to exert some control over his marriage. He has yet to forgive you for completely stripping him of it during your affair. And if he hasn't done so 7 years later, he's not likely to do so anytime soon. He has 1 foot out the door, and I believe he will leave as soon as your youngest moves out. I'm not sure how things will turn out for you if you have a post-nuptial agreement that clearly benefits him financially. If you really want this to work, you should get your husband into individual counseling. The poor man never recovered from your ordeal. My narcissistic mother and jealous sister attempted to trick my husband into leaving me for my infertile sister. The plan was for Sister Marion to take my children and cut me off. My life is really messed up. I honestly don't know where to begin. I had an abusive childhood and it took me 20 years to overcome it. But now I feel like I'm back at square one and will have to start the healing process over. I am 31 years old and female. My mother has been abusive ever since we were born. We're 3 siblings. My brother is 29 and my sister is 28. When I was 5 years old, our father abandoned our mother due to a major disagreement. Mom was always angry and would lose her cool over minor inconveniences. My earliest childhood memories include physical fights between my mother and father. Mom would throw things at him, and he would initially try to avoid them, but after being hit and hurt, he would also throw things at Mom. It may sound funny to some of you, but watching this as a child was terrifying. They would get hurt and occasionally bleed. It was extremely traumatic for us to watch our parents fight. Most of these fighting nights, we'd cry ourselves to sleep. Then one day, Dad left. I'm not even sure which was his last hug before leaving. After that, our lives became even worse. Until now. The man in the house was our father, and we did not feel threatened when he left. There were just random guys showing up to our house. Some of them gave me and my sister strange looks, while others would fight with my mother and break things as I grew older. Some of them would try to grope me when Mom wasn't present. I was a little kid. I had no idea what it was, but I didn't feel right about it. Mom was constantly in a bad mood. It was impossible to have a confrontation with her. She barely made time for us. The majority of our tasks had to be completed independently, and being the eldest one, I had to face the brunt. Mom had a drinking habit, and she came home late. When we woke up, she would still be asleep. I had to make breakfast and school lunch for myself and my siblings when we came back from school. Mom was out for work, and then she would come late in the night. My brother would help me sometimes, but mostly I was on my own on weekends. She would bring men at home, and that would be worse. She would be locked up inside a room for most of the weekend until she heard us fighting. She would come out, yell at us or beat me and my brother, and then would push back to a room. My brother ran away from home when he was 11. My mom didn't blink an eye over it. My brother was working at a store about a mile away, but Mom never reported him or brought him back home. After that, I also collected some bravery and rushed away. But she reported me. I was hauled back home by the cops. I tried to tell the cops that I didn't want to be at home, but I was too terrified to disclose the whole truth. When my sister aged 12, she went away with her 18-year-old boyfriend again. Mom did not report to the cops. I was 15 when I became rebellious. I battled with Mom about why she let others move out, but not me. She cried artificial tears and said I was her favorite child and she couldn't live without me. But the truth was that she wouldn't let me go since I was taking care of the house, cooking dinners and breakfast, cleaning the house, and doing other domestic chores. She was using me, and my brother and sister were useless to her, so she got rid of them. I was stupid for not realizing this earlier, so I just ran away from the house and vanished. It's been 15 years since then. I have never seen my mother's face again. Now I'm married with 2 daughters. When I look back, I can't understand how my mother could let those things happen to us. I mean, I am really protective of my girls. I am always on guard, even while they are with their grandfather and uncles. I've kept in touch with my siblings since I married 10 years ago. My brother is likewise married but has no children, and my sister is single. My brother maintains minimal touch with both of us and only texts on major occasions. When my first daughter was born, my father informed me that he had been following all of us on social media using a phony account. He called to apologize for abandoning us. Initially, I was angry with him since he released himself while leaving us in torment. He claimed he had no choice but to flee because he was fed up with his mother's abuse and violence. He had a choice. He could have reported Mom and gotten our custody, but he decided to avoid his obligations. I was in therapy all along, and ultimately I got over it and forgave him. But I don't have much interaction with him. Only a few emails and phone calls per year. I am closer to my sister, and we talk more frequently. Maybe once a month, maybe sooner. We 3 siblings look out for one another in times of need. Mom reached out to all 3 of us about 5 to 6 years ago and suggested we reconcile. My brother slammed the door in her face, claiming he had no business with her. I didn't return her calls or texts. She did not show up at my door. However, my sister decided to reconcile with Mom. She expressed a desire to move on, and her therapist explained that forgiveness and reconciliation are one method of recovering from previous trauma. I'm not sure how true it was or how well it worked for her, but I was emphatic about not having Mom back in my life. Next month is Mom's 50th birthday, and my sister approached me with the idea of reconciling with her. I was surprised by her plea because she understands how much agony I've gone through. Surely my brother and sister had a difficult upbringing, but they had me as a protection. I fed them, did their washing, cleaned them up, and cared for them. I didn't have somebody doing it for me. I was the person who suffered the most. I asked my sister if she recalled how Mom used to beat me, even though I did all the housework. She stated she remembers everything, but it's time to let go of those painful memories because Mom has changed. I said I would not reconcile. She yelled at me for still carrying a grudge against Mom. I questioned whether she had forgotten what I had gone through. She claims she recalls everything, and it was terrifying back then, but we should forget about it. It's been so many years. She claims I'm being emotional and exaggerating the entire situation. She says, everyone goes through this stuff, but no one takes a grudge to their deathbed like you did. You are exaggerating the situation and fueling your animosity for Mom. I tried to make her understand how tough it was for me to reconcile with my history, and now she expects me to reconcile with the same horrific past. She explained, we are family, and that is what a family does. Forgive each other. She is attempting to guilt-trip me into believing that I am unreasonable for dwelling on the past. She is criticizing me, saying that my treatment was a waste of money because I am still not over my past. I discussed this with my spouse, and he has likewise asked me to move on and reconcile. Now I'm not sure if my feelings of resentment are legitimate or if I'm being too theatrical, as my sister suggests. Update 1. Hello, everyone. Thank you for validating my feelings. It was good to know that I was not the only one who had a difficult childhood, and certainly not the only one who was holding this up. Everyone who stated that they have been through this. I apologize, guys. It's an awful experience. I hope you all arrive strong. And you're right. I do not need to explain my emotions to everyone. Not everyone will understand, even if they have watched my anguish. My sister and I normally converse on the phone and rarely meet because she lives 4 hours away. She showed up at my place unannounced 2 weeks ago. She gave me an unusually long embrace and said she missed me. I asked her what was wrong. She said nothing. It's just sisterly love, for the entire time. She was returning to the theme of the significance of forgiveness in family relationships and how family members should support one another. I replied, wait a minute. If you were hoping to influence me into reconciling with Mom, that will not happen. She attempted to be Mom's advocate, saying, Mom misses you so much. Why do you hate her when we all had the same horrific childhood? I stated that I am not responsible for how others feel about their experiences, but I will not let this go. Furthermore, my brother has yet to resume contact with Mom, so why am I the only one who is unhappy about not having Mom back in my life? She said that it was because Mom wanted to be with her grandchildren, and I was the only one with children among our 3 siblings. I stated, I'm still not sold. How could a mom who was so careless with her own children be trusted with her grandchildren? Furthermore, if Mom misses me so much, why has she never contacted me? She asked if Mom had contacted me. What? I forgave her. I said, I do not know. And I truly did not want her to contact me, so I abandoned the plan of sending Mom to my door. She rose up and remarked, I am such a bummer. My spouse was in the living room watching TV with the girls. While leaving, she approached him and asked, How do you put up with this woman? She is such a dud. They both chuckled. I looked at him and she claimed she was just being funny. As my mother's birthday neared, my sister begged me to attend the party, but I refused, threatening to cut her off if she persisted. She backed off, but she wasn't thrilled about it. I told you to stop giving your opinion. I do not care. Mom celebrated her birthday yesterday, and she showed up at my place today. When I answered the door and saw her standing, I felt as if I had seen a ghost. She was still the egotistical, self-centered lady. She barged into the house asking, Where are my grandchildren? My girls were playing right there. I stopped her from reaching out to my children and instructed them to rush into their room. Mom got upset with me because I was acting like she was a criminal. I stated that she was a criminal who should have been held accountable. Had I reported her to the cops 20 years ago, she accused me of being vengeful, just like my father when he pissed her off. I said, That's why I'm in touch with Dad rather than her. She panicked out when she realized I was talking to my father who had abandoned us. Mom attempted to make us feel guilty because Dad abandoned us while Mom worked so hard to raise us. And I remained soft on Dad and resented her. I said, yes, that's what I'm doing. She described me as an emotionally weak person and stated that she was just there for her granddaughters. I refused to let my daughters meet such a horrible woman who allowed her children to be touched by her boyfriends. She became offended and began shouting at me. I was so correct. She hasn't altered much in the past 20 years. I told her she had to go or I will report her. She went with a bitter expression. This happened about 4 hours ago and I'm still upset. My face is still crimson from fury. I mean, this is the woman my sister had vouched for. I'm quite proud of my decision to shut her out of my life. Update to hello, everyone. I apologize for not updating it sooner. I was dealing with a huge mess. Let me resume where I left off the night my husband returned home. I informed him about Mom's visit. He yelled at me for misbehaving with Mom and chasing her away. He yelled, "Why? Cannot be. I like my sister and will move on." He was like, "When you both had the same past, how come she moved on while you are still hooked on it?" After a while, my sister called, and she was also upset because I was nasty to Mom. She said that it was unjust. Despite abandoning us, the father continues to be present in my life. But Mom is cut off. She was arguing that even though Mom was a little nasty to us, she was the one who raised us, not Dad. I replied I knew Dad was wrong for abandoning us and not fighting for us. However, he approached me and expressed regret and apology for his actions. Unlike Mom, who was still narcissistic but wanted me to forgive her. Forgiveness doesn't work that way. Is it too much to seek for apologies after she tortured me throughout my childhood? Sister told me I was very egoistic and hung up. I was upset that no one understood me, including my husband, who dismissed my feelings. I even began to doubt myself, believing that it was my fault because everyone else was on one side. For the next week, my husband was unusually quiet. I did not make the move because I was also upset. Then a week later, he announced that he wanted to confess something before it was too late. My heart sank. Do you know how these kinds of confessions end up? He asked me to fully hear him out before making a decision. I said yes. He told me he attended my mom's 50th birthday party, which was hosted by my sister. I freaked out like hell. Why did you do it? It was nothing less than cheating on me, he said. My sister texted him that night after she left our house. According to his story, my sister told my husband that Mom was crying herself to sleep because I wouldn't let her meet her grandchildren. My husband had told her he would try to persuade me to reconcile. Then she insisted he go to Mom's birthday party to cover up for me. And he did that. There were pictures of him celebrating with them. No red flags in the pictures. However, a few days later, 2 days before he made the confession, Mom calls him up for dinner and says she wants to discuss something. She told my husband not to inform me about it. This moron didn't tell me anything and went to meet her. Mom was late, but my sister was before time. She was already drunk and had ordered a couple of drinks for my husband. She made moves at him, flirting with him and bad-mouthing me. She called me egotistic and vindictive. He said he was sorry for yelling at me that night, and whatever he said was not his words. He has been fed that by my sister and my mother. He said he realized their evilness only when he went for dinner with them 2 days back. He thought that my sister was making moves at him because she was drunk, but it was all planned. He called up Mom to ask her to hurry up because my sister was drunk and she was acting touchy. Mom didn't answer the call and texted him to drop my sister at her house. My husband insisted that she come and take her daughter away, and he was not going to take her home in a drunken state. Mom showed up in 10 minutes, which meant she was around. My husband insisted that they leave because my sister was too drunk. But my sister said she was feeling light after throwing up and they could continue the dinner. She continued to flirt with him. My mother supported her. He felt she was acting up. My mother tried to put ideas in his mind that they too looked so sweet together and it would be so great if my sister and my husband got him together. My sister has a medical condition and doctors have said she cannot conceive. That's the reason she hasn't married. My mom said it would be the best thing for my sister to get married to my husband and get custody of my girls. In that way, my mom could meet her grandchildren with her favorite daughter and son-in-law. My husband walked away after that. Since that night, my sister has been texting him, asking him out for dinner. She even asked him to come over to her place. She has also been sending him pictures of herself in the changing room and mirror selfies with death pout lips. Gross. This is his version of the story. But I have seen all the messages by myself and my husband's reply to that. I asked him if he wanted my sister. He said no way. If he was interested, he would have cheated by now. I said, "You have cheated on me by attending my mother's party and going to dinners with them behind my back. But I'll deal with it later. First, I need to deal with these 2 wishes." He apologized profusely and said he was not going to get manipulated any further by them. He asked me to forgive after a lot of yelling. I did forgive him on the condition that he had to call them out for their BS in front of me. He dialed my sister in front of me and asked her to come over to our house with Mom. Mom and sister arrived thinking my husband was going to leave me. My husband narrated the whole incident again in front of them. My sister denied some of his allegations, but more or less my husband's version was true because both my sister and my mother were embarrassed by the entire episode. I shouted at them and called them names for wrecking my house. My sister started crying and said it was all Mom's idea to get back at me for humiliating her. My sister confessed that when she told my mom about her medical condition, she said, "Why don't you date Sherry's husband and ask him to get custody of my daughters? And that way you can have a husband and children." They had a full-fledged plan to prove me an insolent and irresponsible mom. My mother planned to make my husband cheat on me, and in a fit of rage I would do something outrageous, and they would use my anger against me and getting the custody. My mother sat there frozen like a rock solid. She whispered to my sister that she had done everything to make my sister's life better. My sister yelled that this was not to make her life better, but to make my life miserable. She had always hated me, and this time she went too far to destroy my life. I chased both of them out of my house. Mom stood up and departed without a word, but my sister clutched my hands and wailed. I said, "I don't have any soft corner for your tears. You're not 13, yo. They got manipulated by Mom. You also had a nasty heart, and that's why you went behind my husband." She cried and promised that she wouldn't do this again, but I shut her off. She tried to contact me after that, but I blocked her. I informed my husband that the only reason I'm forgiving him is because he confessed. Had I found the truth by myself, I would have divorced him right there and wouldn't have let him meet his daughters until they turned 18. He insisted we go for a couple therapy to get over this phase. We attended one session and it was helpful. I was really upset at my spouse when he informed me about the entire stuff. In fact, I doubted him that he had cheated or could be thinking about cheating. But I guess not all men are cheaters. I forgot to explain that he is the reason I was able to put my life together after running away from home. I used to work at his dad's store, and since then, he and his folks have been my family. I'm incredibly grateful to have them in my life. Now on to the next story. To told my wife about coworkers fabricating safety data at our company. Top brass discovered the truth and dispatched legal counsel to pursue us. We still have our jobs, but nothing has changed, and I'm worried that people will be hurt. So my wife and I both work for the same global firm, but in different divisions at the same location. Like other couples, we discuss work, moan about coworkers, and deal with office turmoil. I work in a quality control lab, and she interacts with the company's top brass during weekly meetings and other events. She is also quite pleasant and has made friends with them outside of work. I was moaning to her about my coworkers, how some of them do not conduct quality control checks or disregard them when they fail, and how some of them misrepresent or even make up data to make their jobs easier. Any of those are considered a firing offense at my workplace. I also told her that I'd complained to the individuals in charge of the lab, but nothing happened. Today, after her morning meeting, she commiserated with her crew. As I previously stated, some of them are the company's top brass, and some of the information I gave her regarding the lab came up. I have no idea how it came up, but it did. And apparently, it didn't seem like a huge problem at the time. Near the end of the day, she received a call from HR to schedule a meeting with HR and the company's legal team. They were flying the legal team from our company's headquarters to our site for a meeting to go over whatever information she had concerning the lab practices I mentioned to her. I'm sweating bullets because I have no idea what this means for us. Finally, I know I'll be mentioned, so I'll take it from someone, and I'm quite concerned that someone, possibly me, will be fired. The OP has responded to the comments. 57. Dude, I'm a quality engineer, and everything you described is not unique to your organization. You see it everywhere because when something is non-conforming, it usually means action and possibly paperwork is required. Therefore, technicians prefer to fake the numbers to avoid the extra effort. This is one of the reasons I despise my work. I'm assuming you work in a highly regulated industry, which explains why the legal team is interested. However, they will immediately figure out why your wife knows what she does. Get to you, and you'll have to back up your accusations with evidence. Your quality manager will be requested to give all inspection documentation, and if you are performing your duties appropriately, you will have nothing to worry about. People will not know why the legal team showed up. They will not turn you or your wife in. You have raised demand 8,301. That is comfortable. Life is strange. I'm not sure what you do, but it sounds like it needs to happen. Large fobs. No crap. Congratulations to the organization for paying attention to it. Cichlid armor work. unless the employer does nothing to address the behaviors and instead punishes OP for failing to report them sooner. Proxy. It's time to get a lawyer. You have a legal team, which implies I have one as well. Ma'am, underscore with underscore and attitude. Are you the one fabricating the data? No. Then I doubt you'll be fired if you report it to higher management. I would begin documenting what you said to whom and when you said it. If you have it written in email format, send it to your personal email address and save it as if your work depends on it. Because it could push underscore demand 8,301 higher. I'm worried about retaliation for speaking up. I surely do not misrepresent findings. Mom underscores with an underscore attitude. If I operated a company, I'd be relieved that someone spoke up. What grounds may they use to fire you for telling the truth? But I'm not a business owner, so I have no idea what will happen. I believe that employers can terminate anyone for any reason, bogus or not. Maybe you could start improving your resume and applying for other jobs just to be safe. Best of luck. Update. Multiple people have reported our company's anonymous hotline. The legal team met with my wife since she was the only one they knew who was aware of the occurrences. 1 month later, we are both still employed. No retaliation, which was my greatest fear. However, nothing has changed. People that falsify data continue to work and engage in the same actions. As previously said, we are an international corporation with headquarters in the United States. However, the majority of our operations are managed locally. One commenter asked if I worked for Boeing, which made me laugh endlessly given the news that month. We don't. Ha. However, we operate in an industry where individuals can be badly injured if the lab produces correct results. I believe the local higher management is keeping a lid on things since we are understaffed and unwilling to fire skilled employees. So I'm reporting infractions to my supervisor and documenting each event, and I intend to send it over to HQ if nothing changes in the next week. Comments. Matthew McKim, look into whistleblower protection. I believe your job can be saved and a portion of a potential government fine handed to you. To emphasize demand, raise 8,301. I will look into that. I was concerned about my job last month, but it has now deteriorated to the point where I would rather work in research labs for a quarter of the salary. One person suggested contacting the FBI. I thought it was silly at first, but perhaps it's justified. Matthew McKim. It does not necessarily have to be the FBI. I don't think the industry would be overseen by just any regulatory agency, such as the FDA or OSHA. A northern planner sounds like a third-party testing facility of some sort. You emphasize demand 8,301 higher. I believe so. I would assume that companies conduct their own testing and then send us samples to confirm the results. Siren Scholar. So you're saying we should all avoid at all costs so we don't get seriously hurt. Thank you for the heads up. Do raise demand 8,301 further, emphasizing that lower-level employees who come into direct contact with the materials may be harmed as a result of poor lab testing. However, in the event of a truck accident or a railcar derailment, accurate chemical information is required to protect the population and the environment. Peter 095837. The Lion, Witch, and Audacity. How is there more? We work in an industry where people can suffer serious consequences if the lab produces incorrect results. People that falsify data continue to work and engage in the same actions. Honestly, not surprising. It's pathetic how firms aren't responsible. Ginger emphasizes chaos. Yep, legal was flown in to instill dread in OUP and his wife, ensuring that they did not discuss it with anyone else and kept it between them and no one at family events or the errant reporter, etc. Also, it has just been a month, and there will undoubtedly be quiet retaliations. They will be passed over for promotions, and thus will most likely be at the head of the layoff list as soon as they are not understaffed. Match a magpie yeesh as noble as you may attempt to be. The corporation will try to defend itself, and the wife will need to find new employment. Stat Peter, 095837. The corporation has demonstrated that they are shielding themselves and will not accept any responsibility. OP and his wife truly need to find a different place because working here will not benefit them. Here is the next story. Last night, I made an effort to make my wife feel special. Our relationship has been tense recently, so I wanted to change things around. I had taken a day off from work, reportedly to bring our 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Jack is 14. China is 12 to a soccer camp for a week. But my major goal was to create the perfect mood. I delivered my wife 24 long-stemmed red roses to her workplace. The letter I penned read, "Red roses are red. My affection for you is real. My ideas for tonight will make things clearer for you. Dinner is on me. Dessert is just you, second and thirds. I promise you, I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for our night together." Melinda entered the room looking gorgeous in a modest yet elegant dress. She couldn't help but smile as she observed the creative arrangement. "Wow, this is great," she exclaimed. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude. I brought her to the table where candles and soft music provided a cozy and welcoming ambiance. Melinda's eyes widened as she absorbed the contents of our intimate dinner. "You really didn't need to go this far," she mumbled, her cheeks turning a pale pink. I took her hand and gave it a soft squeeze. "I wanted to make tonight memorable for both of us." I responded, my voice full of warmth and affection. We were enjoying our supper. We joked and told stories, which made the evening even more pleasurable. After we finished dining, I suggested we go to the living room for some dessert and a movie. Melinda consented, and as we sat on the couch, I brought her a platter of luscious chocolate-covered strawberries. She took a bite. Her eyes closed in delight as the flavors swirled on her tongue. The movie played in the background, giving the ideal music for our intimate night together. As the credits rolled, Melinda moved closer to me, resting her head on my shoulder. I threw my arm over her and pulled her closer. Our gazes met, and in that instant I realized we both desired the same thing. With a sweet smile, I leaned in for a tender, loving kiss. Melinda, dressed in a stunning red costume, piqued my interest. Our evening began with food and beverages, followed by a pleasant stroll to our bedroom. As we entered the room, I slowly removed her clothing, creating a sense of anticipation on the bed. I showered her with delicate kisses, focusing on her sensitive parts and neck to create a sense of pleasure and fun. She softly guided my head towards her, full of amusement. I carefully worked my way down her body. I teased and massaged her, accentuating her sensitivity. She answered with soft meows, enjoying the attention as I approached her most sensitive area. I gently and softly explored different approaches to bring her pleasure. Her body tightened, and she yelled out, overcome by the feeling. They enjoyed a lively moment in the park under the warm sun, with laughing filling the air. They rushed towards each other, arms outstretched in a passionate embrace. They paused, their eyes locked in a passionate stare. They continued their journey hand in hand, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. I conveyed my great love for her, and our feelings became entangled as we embraced. We grew closer as we enjoyed intimate times together. We muttered sweet nothings while our hearts beat in unison, creating a lovely melody. Our love transcended physical limits, leaving an unforgettable imprint on our soul. Then I gently massaged her, concentrating on her pleasure. I gently caressed her, establishing a connection. Her head swung sideways as she moaned. Seeking more, I supported her by putting her heels onto my shoulders and proceeded to softly caress her. I promised her I was going to be there for her and focus on her enjoyment. Her face reflected a range of emotions. She desired his presence, but not in the way he had expected. They had previously enjoyed intimate moments, but only while she was severely intoxicated. Even though she wasn't under the influence, she couldn't shake the sensation that he wanted to explore the topic more. He had no intention of forcing her, but his enthusiasm was palpable, with a note of humor. He begged, "Can you forgive me for being such a difficult person over the last few weeks?" He hesitated before responding, then gently brushed his lips against hers, deepening their kiss. They both sensed a spark of connection. He took her hand and guided her through the busy room, their eyes locked in a loving gaze. As the night came to a close, there was laughter, dancing, and shared moments. They stood by the window, staring at the stars together, feeling the warmth of their love. She grasped what was going on and boosted her energies. Determined to outdo the other, they took a step back and avoided each other's motions. She giggled as she saw her fatigued pal sit down on the floor. Her pal couldn't help but smile as they watched her strive for one last moment of calm. Exhausted, they got into bed and fell asleep immediately. They awoke early the next morning, showered, and departed before their friend realized they were gone. They left a message indicating that they needed to work late to compensate for taking the previous day off. Today, Timothy Olympic was prepared for anything. He, Timothy Allen, was planning an ambush for a friend. He checked his watch, expecting them any minute now. My wife of 6 years, Melinda, had grown distant, and our relationship was strained. We had less private encounters together, but she began dressed more attractively. At first, I ignored these changes as typical oscillations in a long-term partnership. However, as time passed, I couldn't shake the mounting unease I felt. One evening, Melinda and I went out to supper without the kids. She appeared especially radiant, like if she had a secret. Her eyes and motions indicated a recent good encounter. Later that night, when I expected to spend some quality time with her, she mentioned having a small yeast infection and denied any physical contact. Intrigued, I started to investigate the reality behind her mysterious aura. I began to pay special attention to her, noticing her absence, scrutinizing the washing, and listening intently to everything she said. Casual talks can reveal remarkable insights. When you are sincerely focused, I believe a woman will go to tremendous efforts to avoid lying. This does not guarantee the truth, but it underlines the significance of carefully listening to and evaluating the numerous meanings behind spoken words. It's like playing linguistic chess, numerous options and combinations to examine. I was taken aback by the underlying disdain that appeared to pervade our chats. The sense of disdain was clear. It looked that my former status in our relationship had transformed, and we were no longer equal. Additionally, it was difficult to reach her at work on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Despite my growing doubts, I continued to believe there was no cause to consult a lawyer. However, I found the tangible proof I needed: a pair of lace panties soiled with signs of another's touch. I remembered the last time I saw her wearing such panties, and it was evident that the dates did not match. The distinction between the two dates seemed clear to me. She had been unfaithful in my eyes. She was more likely to be guilty than innocent. Melinda hesitated, but I insisted. "Come on, you know you want to." She took a big breath and started unbuttoning her blouse. As she divulged more, her inhibitions appeared to dissolve. Finally, she stood in front of me, and only the black sheer panties I had requested. Her eyes met mine, and her expression was a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Come on, Melinda, you know I had been looking forward to this." In actuality, it had only been 2 weeks, but I wanted her to believe it was longer. I wiggled my finger at her jokingly. She confirmed that it had been 2 weeks since we last had fun together. "So let's make it a memorable night." I recommended giving her a pleasant grin. "I'm looking forward to our date tonight," Melinda added, smiling. I nodded, excited about our time together, as she prepared to depart. She took her time removing her accessories, displaying a bit of leg while concealing her genuine intentions. Her blouse unbuttoned, showing more of her intriguing costume. Finally, she wore a sheer black top, which added attraction to her already attractive appearance. Melinda swung effortlessly around, revealing a peek of her shoulder blades and a seductive smile. She clasped her bra and gently turned back, her breasts nestled in the bra cups. She then bent forward, lowering the cups as a playful taunt. "Prepare for this." She lifted the bra and tossed it gently at her partner, who couldn't help but hoot in anticipation, a malicious glitter in her eye. Melinda posed a fun question. "Are you ready to see those panties, babe?" Her buddy enthusiastically stroked his crotch in response. Melinda's face flushed with anticipation, but that only added to her partner's enthusiasm. He stood in expectation, waiting for the big moment. Melinda, never one to disappoint, started unzipping her skirt and bent over, hooking her thumbs into the cloth. Her partner, eager for a glimpse, shouted, "Stop! Straighten up, Melinda, I want to see your curves through the shears." "Hey, who was performing this dance anyway?" She attempted to jest, but a serious undertone was evident. "Hello, I assumed this was for me. I'd like to see the clothing you are wearing. What's the big deal about that outfit, Tim? Come on, I'm excited." "Are you excited? Do you remember when I got you that clothing as a gift last year? It represents our relationship and our memorable times. Come on, entertain me. Please reveal the outfit and let me see it." "Melinda, let the skirt fall," revealing her outfit. It was a simple but elegant design. She placed her hands on her hips. "Ta-da! I was caught off guard for a brief moment. I had not anticipated the situation. Fortunately, I maintained my composure. Blushing would have been awkward at this point. I quickly gained control. Could you please find the black panties? Wear them and try again. Tim, take a close look. I went the extra mile for you. I'm bare down there. Yeah, I know, I responded, proud of my restraint and wit. I asked to see my wife in black panties, not my wife dressed like a model. A model. She was temporarily off balance. Then her disdain for me emerged. I did it for you. You know what? Forget it, she explained, clearly frustrated. I'll just wear something else. No, you must wear the black panties, I insisted. They look excellent on you. She rolled her eyes, but she realized I was correct. Fine. She stormed out of the room to look for her black panties, saying, I'll find them. I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. I knew that once she put on the black panties, the night would go as planned, and as it turned out, it did. I told you I couldn't find them, she said, growing increasingly frustrated. I remained calm. I'm just the one who gave them to you and asked you to wear them for him. I shrugged, trying to appear innocent. If you had said something earlier, I wouldn't have insisted. All you had to do was be truthful. What's so hard about that? I recalled the last time she wore them right before my trip. She looked stunning as we prepared for bed. Maybe they got kicked under the bed, I suggested. Look, Tim, can we just forget about the panties right now? She asked, her horniness fading. Doubt crept into her eyes. Can't we just make love? Sure, no problem. Melinda sighed in relief. I wasn't done with her yet. I think I remember where I bought those, man. They really meant a lot to me. Yes, Tim. Her voice was edged with wariness. I can see that. She stepped back from the bed, her desire clearly ebbing. The last time I saw you with them on was right here in this room. I rolled off the bed and knelt beside it, lifting the sham. You took them off before we had sex, right? I think you were standing right about here, remember? I remember, Tim. I was standing here. I took them off and we had sex. But now I'm standing here. I'm not wearing them. And I seem to be developing a headache. I think I'll give you a rain check on the rest of the evening. Melinda began to pick up her clothes. Whoa, what's happening? It's just a missing item, no big deal. Melinda looked upset. Are we okay? Melinda, is there something you want to share with me? I mean, it's been a while since we last spent time together, and now I'm in the doghouse over a simple request. Why didn't you just tell me you couldn't find the item? What's so hard about being honest? I do not know. I didn't want to let you down. I know we're both busy with our careers and families. I guess I made a small issue into a big one. I'm sorry. Me too. Well, how about we reschedule? Well, look at that. I smiled as I held up the old socks and offered them to her. She took them looking confused, slightly shocked, and then surprisingly determined. So that's where they've been. I thought I'd looked there. I had to admit she recovered quickly. Go ahead, put them on there. Worn out, Sarah. I'll make sure you're the first to see them after I mend them. That's it. I couldn't help but admire her boldness. Is there something else? We haven't had a movie night in 2.5 weeks. We agreed the last time you wore these, you'd put them away before we watched a movie. Explain to me why they're all dusty. I made sure not to sound accusatory. It looks like a bit of dust. What followed was a masterful display of deception and avoidance. We misrepresented our past encounters, providing incorrect dates and times. She even exaggerated her realization that I suspected her of being involved with someone else. I was accused of being jealous over an insignificant matter, the climax. She found it endearing that I suspected her of being overly promiscuous. I profusely apologized for my jealousy and memory errors. A sense of victory shone from her eyes, believing everything was resolved. However, things were far from okay. She was incorrect. It wasn't trivial. And there was nothing charming about being unfaithful. I was well aware of that fact. My feelings transformed into a quiet, intense frustration. My frustration shifted my perspective. I was no longer uncertain. I knew then that she was seeing someone else as far as I was concerned. Our relationship had come to an end. I knew, and soon she would know that I knew. When you're no longer in denial, you can discover a lot in a short period of time. I wanted undeniable proof. I wanted to catch her in the act, and I was willing to go to great lengths. It's incredible what can be done with modern technology, such as GPS equipment, tapping your own phones. a bit of computer sleuthing and digital voice recorders. Before long, I had a clear understanding who he was, what they did, how frequently, and most importantly, when they planned to meet next. Melinda and Ernie were close friends who met occasionally. They would sometimes hang out at a local spot in town. It was surprising to listen to their conversations, as Melinda seemed to view their meetings as a part of her routine. She didn't show any guilt or concern for anyone else. When I realized her lack of empathy and disrespect, I shifted from thinking about reconciliation to seeking justice. Melinda had to pay for her actions. I didn't plan to defend her. She had become the opposition. I was determined to fight her for everything. It's incredible what clarity can do for you. I can even pinpoint the precise moment I reached that turning point. It happened during the hearing of one side of a conversation shortly after the panty incident. An automobile voice recorder captured this side of a cell phone conversation between Melinda and Loverboy. Melinda, suspicious? Not anymore. Tim, believe me entirely, you should see him go out of his way to be polite to me. It truly is extremely cute. Melinda, I just told him that the odd spot on his soiled underwear was from me. I stated how I'd been seeking for those panties for a while. He believed me, without doubt. Melinda laughs. Yeah, but he's my foolish spouse. Melinda, I'm almost there. Just give me a moment. Melinda. No, Ernie, I've told you before I liked him. He's my hubby. Melinda, I adore you too. Ernie, but in a different way. Thank goodness, I don't have to decide. I've got the best of both worlds, a spouse who makes love to me, and a lover who, well, it's amazing what you can think when you don't care about anyone else. She was going to pay big time for playing the cards. She got what life had to offer her. My retribution strategy has several stages. I wanted Melinda to feel both short and long-term suffering. She was my aim, and Ernie was only collateral damage. I was concerned about protecting our children from the immediate consequences of our family's dissolution. I wanted them to blame Melinda for everything, so time was important in my plan. I waited until the end of the school year and planned for them to attend a week-long soccer camp at a university a few hours away. The camp took conducted from Monday to Friday. On Monday, I dropped the kids off at camp and talked to the directors about my marital problems. I indicated suspected drug use, which piqued their interest. I intend to file for divorce shortly to protect the children from the early emotional anguish. The directors were understanding. On Tuesday, the day of reckoning, Melinda met with Ernie at 4 p.m. I spent the day getting ready for the divorce, ensuring that everything was in line. Papers, locks, and funds. Timing was essential. I couldn't help but smile when I saw her car arrive into the parking lot. Our plan was finally in motion. I contacted Melinda's office as soon as I saw her vehicle. I left a brief message on her voicemail, telling her that there was an important situation and that she should call me on my cell phone as soon as possible. A few minutes later, Ernie came, looking startlingly young, possibly in his mid to late 20s, as I watched Melinda passionately kiss Ernie. My remaining concerns regarding my plan were dispelled. I dialed her phone, knowing she'd most likely let it ring while we were engaged in an embrace. As predicted, she reached her voicemail, and I hung up phoning again. I expected her to either switch off her phone or leave it in the car as a phony reason. Later, she chose the second option, locking it in the vehicle. I left a message about a family situation and asked her to contact me back as soon as possible. I started phoning and hanging up every few minutes, hoping to leave multiple missed call notifications on her phone. I waited about 20 minutes, figuring they were at least engaged in conversation. I parked beside Melinda's car and opened my trunk to appear casual in case anyone noticed. I noticed that unscrewing the inner section of a tire valve allowed the air to escape in less than 3 minutes. I successfully flattened both driver's side tires on Melinda's automobile and reattached the inner valves with shortened roofing nails. I embedded them in the tire tread, giving the impression that Melinda had run over a number of nails. Ernie's truck had an unexpected makeover, and I had no intention of causing him harm. I seized the opportunity to perform a prank on him. I borrowed a tiny floor jack and lifted the front of his vehicle. I slightly loosened the oil pan bolt, leaving it just hanging on. I lowered the car, placed the jack in the trunk, and closed it. In only 15 minutes, I finished my duty and drove away. I excitedly anticipated their reaction to the unexpected shift. 2 hours later, they emerged from the chamber, exchanging warm smiles and playful touches. Melinda's tone had softened, but her vigor returned when she observed her car's flat tires. She motioned violently, attempting to express her dissatisfaction. Ernie appeared to exacerbate matters with a mistaken remark, prompting Melinda to turn and admonish him. She found her phone and car key, and her expression changed as she noticed the missed calls. It was time for the show to start, and they prepared to perform. "Hello, Name. I apologize for not responding sooner. I was preoccupied with some significant issues. I am currently not at my office." I interrupted her. I began crumpling paper and changing my voice. "Quiet. Listen. There is an emergency at the soccer camp. 2 children have been brought to the hospital. They require urgent surgery. The doctors are unsure whether they will make it. Hurry. My phone's battery is dwindling. Do you get it? I will meet you at the hospital. Hurry, Melina." I stopped the call and turned off my phone. She shouted into her phone. Her voice was loaded with urgency. Melinda acted quickly. She led Ernie to his car, and they sped away toward the freeway. I waited patiently until they faded from view. Then I cautiously approached Melinda's vehicle. I removed her tires' phony nails and replaced them with cans of Flat Fix. Melinda needed her automobile before the end of the day. After that, I made 2 more calls before returning home. I drove towards the expressway they would take to get to the university. I stopped at the first emergency call box on the expressway and took out 2 voice recorders. Soon, I was dealing with the State Highway Patrol. I lowered my voice and used a southern drawl. "Hello, officer. I want to report an incident of road rage, I suppose you would call it. I was driving the speed limit. I said it with emphasis. And this blue Toyota pickup simply flew up behind me, square into my buttocks. Please excuse my language. I guess I should have pulled over, but anyway, this crazy guy begins leaning on his horn. Then he swings around me. I am astonished he didn't hit anyone and swerved right next to me, almost hit me. But I did have my family with me. The car accelerated and cut in front of me. I got a partial plate with the last 3 numbers, 392. My name is Harold. I was recording when my wife called, alleging the driver had a gun, but I didn't see one. I just wanted to share my tale. I pressed the second recorder, so those mad people can find us and kill us. Hang up, Harold. Hang up now. Like this, Harold. I ended the call. I had recorded phrases with a woman at work who spoke with a strong southern drawl. I informed her that it was for a practical joke on my brother-in-law. She gave me half a dozen takes without batting an eyelid. I got back in my car and drove home. On the way, I called the soccer camp staff and, in a tired voice, told them that telling my wife I was divorcing her had not gone well. I informed them that she had gone ballistic and threatened my life. I warned them that she and her lover might be on their way there to try to take the kids. They needed to prepare. I informed them that I was verifying that they would not allow the children to be with their mother because she had a history of drug use and the environment was not safe for them. The camp staff demonstrated empathy and agreed to keep the situation confidential, sharing information only when absolutely necessary. I was at home for an hour, eating pizza and drinking a soft drink. I expected Marianne to arrive in about an hour, assuming she had contacted the sports camp to confirm the kids' well-being. I questioned this because I had organized everything and she didn't have the camp's name or number when she arrived at university. She discovered that there was no university medical center or hospital when she got there. I smiled as I considered the possibility of them being on the side of the road due to a missing oil drain plug. A few hours later, the camp sent them an update. Melinda and a male companion had arrived, joined by state police. The police had pulled them over for speeding and thoroughly searched them for weapons. Due to a road rage report, camp officials confirmed that the children were safe, but refused to let Melinda see them without her husband present. When asked about the situation, one of the camp staff mentioned Melinda's divorce and inquired whether the man was her husband or lover. This shocked Melinda, who became emotional. The state police intervened and escorted Melinda and Ernie off campus. Then the soccer campers made my day. I couldn't have planned this while Melinda and Ernie were speaking. One of the employees made a drug user reference to the police. They pulled Ernie over shortly after leaving the campus and searched him again. Ernie clearly became upset and engaged in a heated exchange with one of the officers. They arrested him for impaired driving. Melinda was deemed emotionally distressed and was also placed in temporary custody. After speaking with the campers, I received a call from the state police. I had a nice conversation with Sergeant Waterston. I told him about my wife's infidelity and how I decided to file for divorce. I gave him his lawyer's contact information. The sergeant inquired whether I could be available for further discussion with my wife. I agreed, but warned that she could deny everything. I even offered that a vaginal swab could be taken if needed, but the sergeant declined. A half hour later, he received a call. They were releasing Melinda and his wife wanted to talk. He informed the sergeant that Melinda could contact her lawyer using the provided number. The sergeant chuckled at his response about picking up Melinda. He learned that her car was at the motel where the affair happened. 10 minutes later, the phone rang, displaying Melinda's number. He picked up without speaking, and after a long pause, Melinda's shaky voice broke the silence. "Tim, I don't know what you think is going on, but Tim's phone rang in the middle of the night." He looked at the caller ID and saw it was Melinda with a sigh. He answered the call. "Melinda, this better be good." Melinda hesitated before speaking. "Tim, I need to talk to you. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Tim's voice was cold. "What do you want?" "Melinda, I've moved on," Melinda continued, her voice begging. "I love you, Tim. We need to sort this out." Tim hung up the phone and updated his answering machine message. "Hi, this is Tim. Melinda no longer lives here. Her cell number is the next morning." Tim received a text from Melinda. "Please allow me in. We need to talk." Tim hesitated, but eventually consented to let her in. As Melinda went through the door, he could see she was fatigued. They sat down and began to converse, trying to restore their broken friendship. We debated back and forth, but I stood fast. I aired a taped phone conversation from when she was driving, displaying her as she talked to Ernie about their private times. Her compliments about his delicious and exquisite release resonated throughout the room. Melinda broke down in tears. I told her to leave and remain with her partner or whomever she was associated with. She pledged to return to handle the situation, but her plans crumbled day by day as I aggressively followed the truth. On Thursday, she was accosted at work at the end of the day. She was waiting near my car, upset. "I have nothing to say to you, cruel individual." I stayed calm. "Do not talk to me like that. You had challenged me at work. How could you?" She was more upset than before. "What I've done allows me to call you whatever I want, an unkind person. I made an error. We can work through it. I care about you, nasty individual. Let's put an end to this and other silly behavior. You are a stupid person who makes mistakes. Give me $20 and leave. How dare you? I am Tim's wife. Our children are returning home tomorrow, and we must find a way to move forward." "Melinda, please listen to me," I replied strongly. My voice became intense, capturing her attention. She stared at me uncomfortably, her gaze darting around. "You made a choice, and now you must face the consequences. Our marriage, family, and my faith in you are all at risk. You took a chance, but what has your decision cost you?" Melinda's eyes welled with tears as she stammered, "I did not intend for it to go this far. Do not try to defend it, Melinda. You decided to be with someone else, and now you are ready to lose everything. What did you gain from that decision? What did you obtain in exchange for jeopardizing our relationship?" Melinda's face became pale and she shook her head, unable to respond to my query. The weight of her acts became too heavy for her to bear. She just shook her head, unable to react. "You are accurate. You have nothing. No presents, no special outings, and no vehicles. Nothing. There are no hidden savings or bags of cash. Not one thing, right? You have nothing. You're correct about one thing. I have no right to label you a disrespectful individual. A rude individual would at least have repercussions for their conduct. You treated another man with disrespect and received nothing in return. And now you'll lose everything. You aren't even intelligent enough to be a nice, disrespectful person. Calling you a disrespectful person makes disrespectful people seem awful. I guess that just makes you a really naive person." I left her on the ground, crying uncontrollably. I wished her luck, moving forward with my life. I arrived at the lawyer's office exactly on time. I'd quickly stop by my place to freshen up and change into a suit. I wanted her to see me at my finest. I am sitting across from her in the lawyer's office. Melinda's piercing glance should have moved my heart, but her pain was undeniable. My expression stayed stable and composed. My determination is unshakable. Melinda made one last attempt to postpone the inevitable, but I just checked my watch, then back at her. Her shoulders dropped. She took up the pen and asked the lawyer where to sign. Victory was mine. I wanted to celebrate, but I knew I needed to remain composed. The first paper she signed was the divorce petition, which stated irreconcilable differences. I had previously considered mentioning infidelity as the cause, but my lawyer advised against it. My lawyer was great, helping me through the entire process with precision. She highlighted that success was dependent on understanding the opposing parties' interests and bargaining successfully. We worked together to create a well-executed show, replete with props and characters to settle the divorce terms. The document was a name change request. Melinda had to revert to her maiden name. This was a huge adjustment for her, especially because it meant she would no longer have the same surname as her children. This was a difficult decision for her, and she grieved as she let go of their joint surname. Melinda looked at the small black tray in front of her. Her gaze became sad, and a feeling of sorrow sprang within me. It wasn't just accepting the inevitable consequence. The crushing weight of her losses had become all too apparent. Her previously negotiable concessions were now gone. Her hands trembled as she took off her wedding band and watched it depart from the room. She fiddled with her engagement ring, clutching onto the last vestige of her past. But even that small glimmer of optimism was fading. "Do you understand why I am letting you retain the ring, Melinda?" he inquired, his voice full of emotion. "I gave you the ring when I asked you to be my wife. I want you to keep the ring. Remember everything we promised and everything you threw away, gently." He took his wedding band from his finger and presented it to her. "You can have it back. It's still intact and complete. I fulfilled my promises." As if on cue, a lawyer's assistant entered the room with a tray. It was Melinda's ring, but it had been split in half. He scooped up the fragments, held them in his open hand, and flung them into the garbage can. "Worthless crap," he muttered, his voice full of determination. The room went silent. The circumstance weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Melinda sank back into her chair, her hands quivering. She nodded slightly as she attempted to comprehend the information. The room became quieter, and my sensation of accomplishment began to dissipate. I couldn't help but feel some sympathy for her. The following paper was a quit-claim deed for her half of the house. What made it notable was the provision that the monetary value of her portion be deposited in a college trust for the children, with her serving as trustee until they reached adulthood. With that, we proceeded on to the form that truly guaranteed her agreement to everything that had occurred prior to the custody arrangement. My lawyer communicated plainly and firmly. "Do you comprehend the provisions of the custody agreement? The children will dwell in the house, and the parents will alternate being there on a weekly basis, with custody changes taking place between 6 and 7 p.m. on Sundays. Both parents will share expenditures until their children graduate from college or attain legal age. If you agree, please sign below." Seeing my soon-to-be ex-wife's sign, I watched as tears welled up in her eyes. Defeat is not a pleasant sight and lasts a long time. Since Melinda left the motel room with Ernie, I have been resolved to pursue divorce and win custody of the children. Perhaps she imagined she could change the situation. The children played an important role in my life. I made every effort to keep them safe and ensure that Melinda and her parents could view them. I also promised not to tell the children what their mother had done that caused our split. This was conveyed because your mother and father are quitting their union but remaining as parents. Melinda and Ernie were shocked to learn that a strange person held damaging video evidence against them. The evidence, while appearing innocent, has the potential to ruin their reputations. The unidentified person had discovered a link between Melinda and a pornographic actress who resembled her. To capitalize on this, they purchased other films starring this woman. They used their camcorder to find videos of actors that fit Ernie's description. They caught bits of these recordings, resulting in a realistic scene of a motel room meeting in low-light conditions. This carefully manufactured evidence was about to be revealed, making Melinda and Ernie vulnerable and exposed. Melinda's father was eager to address the issue. The 2.5-inch LCD screen exhibited a convincing scenario, leaving no space for dispute. Despite her initial doubts, Melinda's father became convinced and agreed to reconsider the divorce. The danger of the film being shared with their loved ones proven to be an effective motivation. The final decision in the divorce was shared custody. Every other week, the arrangement stipulated that Melinda could not bring her significant others to the house. Call-in races. It's amusing how becoming divorced changed my encounters with women. After Melinda betrayed me, my self-esteem plummeted. It's difficult not to feel inadequate, like if I'm not a decent spouse. Surprisingly, my newly married status seemed to attract ladies like a magnet. Throughout the divorce, I chose to retain a high level of dignity by avoiding revenge and dating. My lawyer told me to avoid introducing any problems. However, as a newly single man with good credit and financial independence, I became a desirable candidate. Surprisingly, many ladies wanted to help me get through this difficult time and regain my confidence. They were unrelenting, and I found myself looking forward to my time at home with the children. It was a much-needed break. Offers came from female coworkers, including several who were close with Melinda, as well as neighbors in my new apartment building, where I lived during my off week. The first meeting happened during one of these off periods, when I was still adjusting to my new surroundings. I'd ordered pizza, so the light knock announcing its arrival wasn't unexpected. However, the delivery guy was. I recognized her as someone I'd seen inside the facility. I just didn't know her name, darling. Darlin is pronounced with a yin, welcomed me to the building in a polite manner. She had an average appearance and a nice personality. As we became acquainted, we shared pizza and beers. Darlin was divorced. She suspects her ex tried to have sexual relations with ladies under the age of 18. She was friendly, chubby, and straightforward. Darlin conveyed her interest in me by saying, "I like you, Tim. You seem like a really decent man, so whenever you need the company of a woman, simply phone old Darlin." I nodded, unsure of my capacity to manage cooking and cleaning as a newly single man. Darlin and I had an open discussion about our preferences. She enjoyed giving and receiving oral pleasure, but only had intercourse after a date. Anal was not on the table. Her straightforwardness left no opportunity for misunderstanding as we continued to get to know each other. Darlin rapidly undressed me. Her eyes scanned my appearance and she commented on my attractiveness. This was an odd request, but I couldn't deny her superb oral performance. Darlin was clearly passionate about her work, and I felt lucky to be in her company. It wasn't only her enthusiasm, it was her way as well. She used her lips, tongue, and teeth skillfully. As her excitement grew, she became more hands-on with her skills. She asked that I trust her. At my nod, she softly pressed on a sensitive area, heightening the sensation. The next night, a fresh journey started. After sharing a quiet pizza dinner that we both deemed a memorable occasion, we found ourselves becoming closer. Our relationship grew, but we stayed open to new experiences. A few weeks later, Darlin had to travel for work, leaving me with some spare time. In her absence, she dispatched a buddy to accompany me. Rhonda was a different type of partner, less concerned with oral communication but a wonderful lover in her own right. Her distinct hip movements and strong cargo muscles produced a seductive dance that drew me deeply. Our connection was clear, and we relished the excitement of our shared experiences. I can't deny that I was extremely daring in the year following my divorce. I had personal interactions with 17 different ladies, yet it felt hollow. Nevertheless, I cherish the memories. I couldn't help but mourn the profound connection I previously had with my ex-wife, Melinda, as a method to vent my rage. I did not hide my connections from her. Seeing her pain every Sunday night became a strange type of fulfillment. We gradually established a routine, and our children followed suit. Despite the difficulties of the holidays, we were able to navigate them. Years passed, and we all became older, but not necessarily wiser. Then, 4 years after their divorce, something unexpected occurred. I fell in love at a youth group, where the students were enthusiastically planning their impending winter adventure. As snow started to fall, they eagerly awaited the snow. In the coming weekends, a chaperone willing to help joined the group, making the trip even more memorable. Jillian, a fellow chaperone on a ski trip, accidentally shattered her arm after receiving first aid from the ski patrol. I was tasked with transporting her to the hospital for an X-ray and cast. The hospital was overcrowded due to a traffic accident, so we opted to dine at a neighboring restaurant and wait a few hours. As Jillian and I talked and ate together, we realized we had a deep connection. Attracted to her, I was captivated to Jillian, who appeared to reciprocate my feelings. After a month of building up courage, I asked her out on a date. She was 21 years younger than me, but she accepted, stating that her parents had a comparable age difference and were still together. We began dating, and over the next few weeks I let go of my previous relationships. Jillian and I got serious immediately. We're 2 months into our relationship. Melinda inquired if I was in love with Jillian. I was prepared to refute it, but I could not lie. I acknowledged my feelings with a soft yes. Melinda just nodded and hugged me, saying, "You deserve to be happy." I was startled. I knew I genuinely cared about Jillian, and Melinda understood and agreed. When I told Jillian about this, she merely grinned and said it took me long enough. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy and satisfied with myself. I realized there was something important I needed to accomplish. I accepted Melinda's apologies for her previous treachery, but I never completely forgave her. It was time to officially forgive Melinda. As I drove over, I recalled Melinda's effort at an apology and explanation. The first time hardly registered. It was shortly before we finalized our divorce and parenting arrangements. Melinda sought a half-hour private meeting with me before signing. I knew what she wanted to talk about, trying to persuade me to reconsider the divorce. I arrived prepared. On my way to the meeting, I listened to recordings of Melinda praising Ernie's intimate moments for the entire half hour. I stared at her, treating her with contempt. When the half hour was up, I checked my watch and picked up a pen. Melinda realized she had failed in her mission. Melinda approached me after the holidays to discuss my dating policy, which is open door and open fly. This revelation sparked a difficult period in our relationship. "Look, Tim, I realize I made a mistake. It caused a great deal of hurt in our family." "Our family?" "Tim, the holidays were difficult for everyone. Me, you, and the children. We all felt it. I understand you've been with other people, and it's been difficult on all of us. We were meant to be together, Tim. All of us. I have scheduled an appointment for us with a counselor. It's time to mend things. I have learned my lesson." Tim was taken aback. He was completely taken by surprise. He was taken aback by what Melinda had just said and was unable to respond immediately. Then a wave of rage washed over him, and his mind tightened into a cold focus. "Did you learn your lesson?" "Yes, Tim, I promise to be truthful to you from now on." Melinda gave me a sincere expression. I suspected she didn't truly believe her own words. "So, are you going to end things with your significant other?" "Actually, I have not seen or spoken with Ernie since that difficult day. Unlike you, I have never been involved with anyone else." "I see." I studied her expression and nodded. "Are there any specific locations you prefer for intimate moments? Is it important, as long as it's private? How dare you?" "I have never been with another man, period. Unlike you and your easygoing lifestyle, she was becoming quite emotional. I chose to let her vent. Do you know how difficult it is to know that you will be leaving the kids for the week? Well, 1, that we are not married to. I am now a single guy. And 3, as if that meant anything. You and I belong together. It does not matter if you are single. It is still cheating on me. You should stop playing around and give us a chance to get back together. I'd had enough. Look, Melinda, if you're looking for some fun, come on by some night and we can hang around. I've always had a fantasy of you. Me and another person. I'm game." The conversation ended there. Melinda attempted to apologize every several months, and a year ago she did it sincerely. She had been in therapy and her speech improved as a result. Her voice sounded weaker than usual. "Tim, I want to confess that I cannot fully comprehend the hurt I caused by violating our marriage and lying. I apologize for the emotional distress I caused you and the children as a result of my selfishness. Therapy helped me realize how bad my acts were. I am sincerely sorry." Apology acknowledged. Melinda explained that her decision to be unfaithful was the result of a combination of events, including untreated depression, a midlife crisis, and a loss of her beliefs. She thought she had lost control of her life and did it to reclaim it. Ernie was not a particularly romantic boyfriend. He was simply special. Their bond wasn't anything special. It was the deceit that made it more appealing. Melinda met Ernie at work, and their relationship began with a dance and some light flirting after hours. As time passed, Ernie and Melinda began to play a hidden game, sneaking around behind the user's back while the user was not around. Ernie persuaded Melinda to take a half-day off work. They met at a downtown hotel restaurant for a supper, where they flirted and sipped wine. The thrill of their hidden encounters gave their relationship a thrilling new edge. He inquired if she wanted to taste some desserts and suggested the restaurant's specialty. He slid urumqi over to her. Melinda liked the gesture but politely declined. He persuaded her to at least look at the room's view. When Melinda entered, she noticed that the room had no view. Ernie, attempting to be charming, stated that the most stunning vista was directly in front of her. Melinda reacted lightly, saying she was simply standing there, attracted by his presence. Melinda leaned against the wall and felt Ernie's muscular arms wrap around her. Their eyes locked, and a spark of excitement flew between them as they shared a passionate moment. Their friendship deepened. Ernie softly kissed Melinda, and they entered their bedroom, eager to explore their love for each other. They spent their afternoon bonding. When I returned, Melinda expressed more devotion to compensate for any guilt. She was already planning my next journey away over time. Melinda became more comfortable cheating, and she didn't wait for me to leave town. I eventually caught her. After accepting her apology, I departed without specifically forgiving. This was critical for my growth and advancement. Before I got serious with Jillian, I needed to forgive Melinda on the emotional Sunday night. Melinda, the children, and I were all in tears. Some were unhappy and regretful, while others were happy. I told Melinda that despite everything we had been through, I still loved her. She stated the same thing. She has never stopped loving me. I offered her a nod to indicate that I understood a father's wish. Life tells us that nothing is everlasting. I loved Jillian and she loved me, and we were happy in our relationship. However, we were both aware that marriage was not in our future. Jillian wanted children, but I had already had a vasectomy after our daughter Chana was born and was not considering a reversal. Our time together was limited. We didn't know when it would happen. We uncovered the truth more faster than we anticipated. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Jillian and I were taking a break from our usual routine. After a fun-filled day together, we got a call from Jillian's mother. Her father had suffered a stroke and was in the hospital. The situation was terrible. We didn't waste any time packing Jillian's baggage and headed to the airport. As we said our emotional goodbyes, we realized it might be the final time we saw each other. Jillian clung to me, her eyes welling up with tears, as I tried to console her as she boarded the plane. "We had to part ways with heavy hearts," Jillian promised. "I will never forget or stop loving you." And with that, she vanished into the mob, leaving me with mixed feelings. I pushed back my emotions until I got to my car. Then the emotions overtook me. I was alone, and it was horrible. I sat there understanding that my fury at Melinda during our divorce had concealed a great deal of sorrow. Pain was something I hadn't completely experienced. My single life had prevented me from diving deeper. Spending time with Jillian altered everything. It released me from my rage against Melinda and allowed my heart to embrace love once more. On Sunday morning, I went to the house. When I told Melinda and the kids what had happened, they sensed something was wrong. They were very understanding and supportive. Melinda took charge and prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. We talked late into the night until she left. I had difficulty sleeping that night. Throughout the week, I spoke with Jillian several times, confirming our fears about her father's lengthy recuperation and her desire to remain with her mother. Despite the fact that I was alone on Friday, the kids were understanding and supportive. I found a method to enjoy my evening. The kids were busy with their friends, and I didn't need to hunt for company because Jillian had helped me overcome my past. I was thinking about what to have for supper when the doorbell rang. Melinda, holding a pizza, a six-pack, and a pleasant smile, stood at the door. I smiled at her, accepted the six-pack, and followed the lovely fragrance of pizza as she entered the house ahead of me. We had a great evening full of laughing and talk. It was sorry to see her go. To my amazement, I slept soundly that night. On Saturday, the children were preoccupied with their plans. I called Melinda at 3 p.m. to invite her to supper. She hesitated at first, but consented after I playfully threatened to deliver Chinese food to her door. Melinda directly inquired, "Are you asking me out, Tim?" Her tone was simultaneously casual and inquiring. I recognized the ambiguity in our talk. She was elusive, leaving it to me to elucidate. Fortunately, I had considered this option before calling her. "Yes, that is exactly what I am doing. Exactly what Tim requested." His voice reflected a smile. "I thought I overheard something." "What did you just say?" she responded, attempting to mask her amazement. "I wasn't going to let you catch me off guard like that," Tim teased. "So you are then," she replied cautiously, inviting me out on a date. "Yes, I am." Tim reacted with quiet certainty. "Unless you have alternative plans, I do not wish to impose. Perhaps we can do it another time." "No," she responded a little too enthusiastically. "I have nothing important planned." Tim nodded at himself. "Nice recovery." "All right?" Tim maintained his tone, becoming more relaxed. "If that's okay, I'll pick you up at 7. Is this okay?" "7 sharp is good," she agreed, sounding more relaxed. Tim waited for her. Next question. "Tim, so what kind of place do you envision?" The question of whether this was a date seemed insignificant in comparison to another question. The actual question was about what to wear. If clothes define a person, then a woman's clothing says something. I didn't know what. I played my trump card. "You are the best woman I know at dressing for any occasion. I'll pick you up at 7. "Bye." I immediately ended the call. A sudden sensation of panic surged over me. I'd just asked my ex-wife on a date. A date? What was I thinking? I couldn't believe I was making these judgments. Was this a reaction to Jillian's departure? Was I trying to confuse Melinda, or was I really interested in her? I had a mix of thrill and uneasiness. I considered calling her several times, but couldn't figure out why. Was I trying to apologize or explain myself? My thoughts were all over the place, and I couldn't find a clear response to clear my head. I took a lengthy, steamy shower. It was during that shower that I understood I needed to sort out my sentiments and make better decisions. Showered, cleansed, and invigorated. I still felt uncomfortable about asking Melinda out. I had no idea what I would dress or how to approach the occasion. I stepped out of the restroom to see Melinda in the walk-in closet. Her wardrobe selections included a red bra and underwear, as well as a short red dress, trousers, and a tank top. She looked at me, wanting my input. My thoughts raced. However, my body responded in ways I couldn't control. "Your recovery time appears to have increased with age," she said, confronting the elephant in the room. Tim's inquiry was answered, and he realized she had been present the entire time. Her intense stare gave the impression that she was fixated on him. "Tim, if you tell me what you desire, I will be able to better comprehend our destination." Tim found himself unable to speak or move, and the prospect of supper and their date seemed trivial. Where were they going? One part of him understood just where he wanted to go. His heart was pounding rapidly. "Tim's heart rate has increased somewhat. Your blood pressure appears to be normal," she noted, matching the thumping in his chest. "Did Jillian do that? Did she like you that way?" "I must say, Tim, it's incredibly remarkable, engaging, and appealing." Melinda and Jillian were discussing their personal grooming practices. They discussed their smooth appearance and various explanations for it. The talk became more intimate when Melinda asked him if he liked their smoothness. Melinda and I were nearing the zenith of our excitement. "Melinda, I do not think we should be doing this," I replied, attempting to maintain control. Melinda relaxed her grip and eventually let go of our embrace. The intensity increased as we went on, and we soon reached the peak of our passion. The intensity of the moment had me overwhelmed. We collapsed to the floor, still attached. That is how the children discovered us. I had entirely forgotten about their presence. When they arrived home from their dates, they heard Melinda cry. The shock of the incident is likely to leave them scarred. Claim the kitty. That night, the kids went on dates, while Melinda and I went on our own excursion. Okay, sort of. We had had enough of the high tension by the middle of dinner. We rushed home and had a fantastic evening together. The following morning, the kids softly knocked on our bedroom door, waking us up, modestly covered. We greeted them with a friendly smile as they entered our room. Their expressions were difficult to understand, a combination of apprehension, tiredness, and anticipation. "Are you both back together?" they inquired, straight to the point like only young folks can. Melinda's voice was a mixture of determination and grief as she talked. We should improve on our relationship. She paused for a deep breath before continuing. How about we all strive to find common ground and improve things? If that's okay with you, I'd prefer to move back in with you as a family as soon as feasible. There was a moment of silence before the response arrived. What? Melinda's body shook with a combination of dread and rage. I believe we all require time, counseling, and patience, but I don't see another way. Do you? Melinda's reaction was tremendous. She flung her arms around me passionately. The bedroom door slammed shut and a muffled yes could be heard on the other end. Melinda was determined to ensure everything ran smoothly. I will do all it takes to achieve our success. It might take a long, she added with confidence. She was indeed thorough, and it appeared that their journey would be long. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what